don't believe in regret at all. Because it's exactly the way it was supposed to be. And telling that business story, I'm so grateful for everything I went through, because I have things that money can't buy. I have appreciation and perspective. And
for sure.
You don't get that until you've been at the bottom and then worked your way back.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Biz Dad podcast. I'm excited to have Rami on today. He's another GoBundance guy. He actually came to speak at GoBundance before he joined GoBundance. We were doing a conversation about low testosterone and that type of stuff, and trying to figure out whether you should get help getting your testosterone up or have just nature try to figure out how to get it up. And it was awesome to have the conversation and listen to you guys have a bull versus bear conversation up there. It was really awesome. But I'm excited to kind of get to know you on a different level. You and I have you've been my coach in the past, and now we get to talk on a much different level than hey Adam, why are you still fat? Because I
never said that. Come on,
you did
Adam.
Not, but man,
No.
I felt it. Goodness gracious! But no,
I just said I'm disappointed in you, right? Kind of the father statement right there. Right?
Yeah, lovely. All right, well, I'm going to pause the recording because I'm going to cry for a little bit. But no, Rami, if you could do me a favor, introduce yourself, your family, tell us a little bit about your, businesses in your case, and let the audience and myself know a little bit more about you.
Okay, cool. So, live in Atlanta now, been here about 30 years. I grew up in upstate New York. I moved out when I was about 25. When I finished graduate school, I moved down to Florida. And then moved to Georgia about 30 years ago, and got married in 2000. So it's super easy to remember how many years I've been married. It's 23. And I have a boy, an older boy, who's about to turn 22. So we got started pretty quickly. And he's a rising senior at Georgia Tech here in Atlanta. And I have a daughter who's 18. So a boy and a girl, and she's just starting college next week. So we are semi-empty nesters as of next week because my boy's still living at home. He commutes to college. So we're 20 minutes from both of their colleges. So that's a quick synopsis of the family. And so business-wise, I've been in the fitness industry, as you know, for 31 years. Ironically, started 92 when I moved to Florida, and I was in corporate America for all of 3.5 years. That's how long I lasted in a normal W-2. Absolutely hated it. I'm an entrepreneur at heart, always have been, had my little businesses when I was a kid. And left corporate America, went back to graduate school, University of Miami, got another graduate degree in exercise science in the early, 92 to 94. And kind of cut my teeth on personal training, exercise physiology. While I was there, actually met my wife to be. She worked in the gym that I did my first internship in, so that's pretty cool. So she's in the industry as well. And we moved to Atlanta in late 94, so right before the Olympics came to Atlanta. So we, kind of like what you're seeing in Florida, we got to see 1 million people move here in 10 years. So Atlanta's changed a lot since we got here, right? 1 decade, 1 million people moved here. So I've been in the fitness industry. I was a trainer for about 6 years, got sick of working for other people, entrepreneurial, started my own business, started my own gym in 1999, knew absolutely nothing. I took 1 business class in 9 years of college. So everything I took ended in an ology, right? Psychology, biology, physiology. So I just kind of cut my teeth, the school of hard knocks, right? And I hit the ground at a really good time. So I started in 99, economy was amazing. Personal training was new in Atlanta. I grew that business 30% a year for 7 or 8 years straight. I've told the story so many times. It's pertinent to being a dad because we'll get into it. But, grew it like crazy. It was amazing. Really, we had one of the top 5 most profitable personal training gyms in the United States at that time. So come, what these years are going to hear like come 2007, come 2008, I decided it's time to expand. So I literally moved my business, bought a commercial building, doubled my fixed overhead in June of 2008.
Lovely.
So ... You can fill in the rest of this equation, right? We actually didn't really get hit with the recession until late 2009. Real estate kind of got hit in 2007, right? But we didn't really get hit until 2009. And, it was not easy. And if you do the age of my kids, I had like a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old during this time, right? Basically almost bankrupt in 4 to 5 years. And, we'll dive more into this, but this is just kind of giving you the business history. Was able to, and we can dive into how that happened if you want later, but was able to turn the business around in 2014. The next 4 years, we really, almost doubled again, got going. And my manager, who had really helped me do it, decided he wanted to make an offer and buy my business. And timing couldn't have been better. Like, looking back on it, I never once have said, I wonder if I should have done that. Like, the timing was great. So, and I finally had good timing because I sold my business in 2019, about a year before COVID, right? So,
there you go.
Although Georgia was not too bad during COVID for gyms, but some places were awful, right? So sold it, and, people said, what are you going to do? I said, take a little time off. It wasn't enough money to retire, but it was certainly enough to give me a bridge. And I was just, quite frankly, I was sick of running a business I had up to 17, 18 employees. I just wanted me, a laptop, and I could go anywhere I want and do it. And that's when I got into kind of virtual coaching, consulting, speaking, stuff I had done my whole career, but now I made it, my my vertical income, right? And really got into it. Loved it. That was in 20, and amazing. I started that right in 2020. So virtual coaching blew up.
Yep.
Everybody was dying on the vine, and I grew my business 30, 40% that first year, right? And I love it. And I really learned I really like talking on the phone. You didn't notice that at all when I was coaching you, right, Adam?
Never would have noticed.
Did I ever talk? No, that was never
pretty rare. It's pretty rare. What's your weight?
Like, come on.
Why aren't you eating right? And that's it. That's it.
Why didn't you do your food logs, Adam? But so while I was doing that, I was consulting with a good friend who wanted to buy a gym. And I did a lot of that, initially because I'd had 20 years of experience. And she wanted to buy a mom and pop, and it was absolutely awful. I looked at the books. It was, she would have been miserable if she bought this business. At the same time, one of my best friends who had kind of grown his business the same time as me, but had taken off, had started a fitness franchise. And you and I have talked about it a little bit, and it's called Alloy Personal Training. And I said, look, I think you should buy this franchise. I think it's a massive shortcut. They've been in business for 30 years. They know how to do it. So I helped her buy this business. Well, tell you the truth, as I did it, I fell back in love with the gym business because it was so different than owning a mom and pop because you have this support system, right? So, I used the Al Pacino line, right? Just when I thought I was out of the gyms, they pulled me back in, They pulled me back in. And so once my non-compete was over, I bought in with her. I was so excited about it. I became her consultant. I helped her run the sales, and I became a minority owner. And since then, I've gotten fully involved. So I'm still coaching, still speaking, doing that, but that's a really small portion of what I do now. The majority of what I do is involved in these franchises. So I'm now an independent sales rep for them. So I sell them. And quite frankly, in the GoBundance way, I take my commissions from that and I buy into, locations. So right now, my wife just bought into one. So the whole family's doing it now. It's super exciting. And we now are part owners in 4 of them. And I've got a bunch of GoBros that are interested. And so that's the majority that kind of drives my day. But I still have some corporate wellness clients. I still have, ironically, 50% of my coaching clients are now GoBros. And I've only been with GoBundance I got a lot from that first presentation. I'll just tell you, talk about testosterone and all of a sudden everybody wants to be your client, and I'm loving it. And having been in the industry for 30 years, I'm at that point with that portion of my business where I can be very picky about my clients. That's why I fired you, Adam, just so you know. You weren't listening yet. I think you fired me. I'm not sure. But no, but but in all seriousness, I technically have a wait list. And the wait list means that I'm only taking people who really resonate with what I do, right? And so that's what I'm doing now. So never left the fitness business for 31 years. Just did many, many different things. And that's where I'm at now. So that's you think I've told that story?
There's a lot of bobbing and weaving we could do in the middle of that.
There's a lot in there, And most people want to talk. Like Jamie and I, I told you I did Jamie's podcast last week, and we dove a lot into, what was it like to go from here? I was saying I'm going to retire at 55. That's the way my trajectory was going, to literally completely empty. I'm talking retirement accounts, 529, everything gone, house underwater, commercial building underwater.
Jeez.
Paying my employees from my own savings, so no profit, to where I am now. And a lot of that has really happened in the last year and a half since I've joined GoBundance too. So,
wow.
And being a dad the whole time, right? So
yeah.
raising two kids through all that. And by the way, kept them in private school, 2 of them the whole time.
Golly.
No idea how I did that.
Yeah, no joke.
Looking back. Yeah.
Man, so that's gonna be a lot to dig into for sure. I mean, especially, you know, I'm looking forward to kind of prying apart, like, you know, the perspective from the kids and where they were at. And, you know, they're like, we've all gone through heartaches pre-kids, and then we've gone through heartaches post-kids, and how we handle them are very different, whether it's pre or post, you know, when you have kids, like things happen completely differently. Like the focus is completely changed. Everything about it. But before we go down that road, though, I'd like to get to know a little bit about your like history from my like elementary on type of thing, right? So understanding where you come from. So if you can tell me a little bit about like your upbringing, your dad, your family circle, how that kind of all evolved, and if you think of anything where as you're going along, like, hey, you know, this is actually one thing that I've really picked up and loved about being a dad now, or whatever it is. Like, let's just kind of dig into that a little bit. Yeah, very cool. And I'm going to give you a little tip because I have so much on my mind right now, because I just did a thing called Storyworth. Have you heard of this? Okay. I have not.
Write it down. So my family gave it to me last Father's Day, and it's basically a book that you write about your history. And they prompt you every week for 52 weeks with a question. Like the first question was, have you ever won anything? Tell me about that. What were your grandparents like? And it's a gift to give to your children that they have for the rest of their lives. Tons of stuff in there they didn't know about me. Stuff I hadn't thought about in 30 or 40 years. So the timing is perfect for this, because I have all this on my mind and all that. So I went all the way back to my childhood, like my baseball card collection and my, you know, like all that stuff that you just don't think about anymore, right? Yeah. And it's so cool. And then they make a hardcover book and you give it to your kids as a gift, and hopefully they show it to your grandkids and all that, you know. I gave it to my kids last week and they both got a little tear. You know, they're teenagers. That's awesome. So just a tiny tear, you know. But yeah, so was actually born in New York. This is crazy. I'll go into all the details. I didn't find this out until I was 25. My parents were not married when I was born. I didn't know this until I was 25 years old. So I actually was born with a different name. My mother was married 3 times. So all of my siblings are half siblings. So if you add them all up, you know, I have like 2, right? But I actually have 4, right? Half siblings from my mom being married multiple times. When she got pregnant with my dad, my biological dad, she was married to the husband before. So it was an affair. Gotcha. Yeah. Hence, I didn't learn about it until I was 25, right? I found out about it when my dad had heart surgery, and he was on, I think they give him morphine when they're done, like it's massive drugs. And he started telling me the story. He thought he was dying. So he was like trying to tell me what had happened, right? Yeah. So that's crazy. So they actually adopted me when I was 2. And I never knew any of this, you know, and so my siblings are way older than me, right? So my sister was in the house when I was born. She's 9 years older than me. My 2 brothers, half brothers, are like 20 years older than me. So they were already gone. And they really, especially my brother Steve, became more like an uncle or almost like a father figure. And we can talk about that too. I wrote that in Storyworth. One of the questions was, who influenced you the most of your parents? And I put my brother in there, because he was so much older than me. You know, it's funny, when I do 23andMe, he shows up as my uncle. Because uncles and half-brothers have the same DNA, and he's so much older, the algorithm says, well, this must be your uncle. Yeah, it's got to be your uncle for sure. My mother had him when she was 20, had me when she was 40, which 60 years ago was crazy. Nobody had kids at 40, right? Now that you're figuring out why I'm such a crazy person now, right? Well, my mind... the list is long on why that is, but we'll stick with this being that could be a 7-hour podcast, you know. So was raised almost as an only child, right? My sister moved out when she was 17. She got married to her first husband super young, and so I was like 9, and I was 100% a latchkey kid. So both my parents worked full-time at IBM. They were both massive intellectuals. My dad was actually the head of the analytical math department at the research center in Yorktown Heights, New York. And my mom was the manager of the computer center in IBM. And they actually met. She was his secretary in the math department, and they had an affair. And then that's how the whole thing happened, right? There you go. Pretty crazy, right? Didn't find out about this till later. So I was fully independent, hence why I'm so independent now. I had a key to my house when I was 8 years old. I made all my meals. I did my own laundry. Like, they were never home. In fact, I wrote in that book, I know that when I was really young, I got dropped off after school at another family, but I don't even remember who they were. I knew where they lived, but I don't know their name. I'd love to find them out, right? It was, I'm 60, dude. Things were very different. Like, they would not see me forever. I'll give you a funny story. When I was 10, I was having a snowball fight with the kids in the neighborhood, and I fell out of a tree and I snapped my wrist. I broke it. And I called my mom at work, and she literally said, put a splint on it. I can't leave work till 5. So I made a splint. I wish I had a picture of it, right? And it was full on broken wrist. I mean, it was super painful, but that's just the way the world was, Yeah. It made it super tough. So I grew up like that. I had a really close, emotional, tight relationship with my dad. He was from the Middle East, hence my strange name, Rami Odeh, right? Found out another thing later. So this is crazy. Like, you find out all this stuff later. And then, like you were saying, you kind of put the pieces together. Like, oh, that's why they were that way. That he really wanted to take me back to the Middle East. He was sick of the United States. He wanted to move back. Hence, he gave me an Arabic name, but it never happened. So I actually went to kindergarten in Lebanon. So he was a professor at the American University in Beirut. And they had a program where you could bring your kids and go to an American kindergarten there. So when I was 5 years old, I was there, and went back when I was 7 as well. So did a lot of stuff like that. Okay. So, really close with my dad, Middle Eastern, sweet, loving. Like, if you think about the typical sort of archetype of a male and a female, my father had more of the feminine energy. And then my mom was from Frankfurt, Germany, and lived through the Depression. She was 10 years older than my dad. She was tough as nails. Right. And interestingly enough, so my authority figure was actually my mom, and my dad was my soft place to go. So kind of strange, right? Yeah. Kind of messed up. But thank God I had him, because she was a badass. Like, both of my brothers ran away from home, just to give you an idea. And so did my sister, basically, right? She left at 17. So interject real quick and something even crazier, because this story does get crazier. I found out I have another half brother, and I found him through 23andMe. So when we were cleaning out my house that I grew up in to move my mother to Florida when she was in her 80s, my son found a letter, and he said, he comes in the room, he was like 10. He goes, Dad, I think Grandpa had a girlfriend. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he had read these were love letters that he had saved. He had in a relationship before my mom and had another son that he had given up for adoption. So at the time, I knew I had another half brother, but I couldn't find him, right? There was no internet. There was no 23andMe. When I did 23andMe, my wife is like, you should make yours public just in case your half brother's out there. Adam, I turned it on, and he popped up number 1.
Wow.
And reached out to him. Great guy. And this is what's crazy, because I've never met him, right? We have the same dad, but different moms. He's a competitive triathlete. He's totally into sports. He looks exactly like my dad, right? Like a twin. It's really, really cool. So I actually have another half sibling. Right. So, wow. So you're getting the feeling, and I'm sure you understand, there's a lot of secrets in my family, right? Yeah. A lot of stuff. And that's why I'm so ridiculously honest. Like I said, I'm never going to have that happen with my kids. Yeah. That kind of defined me as a father. So anyway, that's how I grew up. When I was a kid, I was like, into fringe sports. So I was into racing motorcycles when everybody else was playing football. So I really got into racing motocross to the point where I thought I could be professional. When I was 16, 17, 18, I was actually really good in New York. And so I told my parents, hey, I don't want to go to college. I want to be a professional motocross racer. They said, hey, we're not paying your bills anymore. Like, good luck with that. Like, you can stay at home, but you're on your own. And so I did give it a shot. I took a year off after high school and tried. And I realized working 50 hours a week and trying to be a professional motocross racer didn't work. Yeah. I realized how much my parents were supporting me before that, right? Because I was able to do all the practice and training and all that I needed, right? So I went to college when I was 19, I guess, because I took a year off, maybe 18. I graduated when I was 17. And I loved college. Like, I just fell in love with the whole process. Went to school, a couple of small schools in upstate New York. I didn't apply myself at all into high school. My kids laugh. I think I had a 2.2. They're like, can you even do that? Because, kids now, if they have under a 3.7, they feel like they're failing, right? Yeah. And I'm like, no, you can do that. I had friends that had worse, like, trust me. And So I went to a couple of state schools and then ended up going to graduate school at RPI, which is a engineering school in upstate New York, for industrial psychology, which I really loved psychology and I loved all those. And that brings you right up to me moving to Florida, which I kind of talked about before, right? So that was really quick, with probably a fair amount of points that we can dive into.
Yeah, there's a ton in there for sure.
Yeah.
I would imagine growing up, I mean, I would imagine part of the reason that your parents said, no way am I paying for you when you want to go do this, is because you mentioned them being both intellectuals and wanting to do all that stuff. So you're like, I'm not doing college. And they're like, yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, it was funny. And it was such a good thing to do because I realized, holy cow, college is a great idea. Like they're going to pay for it. I can go up there, live with my friends, party all the time, and I also feel like I wasn't going to have any regrets that I never tried it, because I did have potential. I just didn't have the cojones, so to speak. There's a level of craziness you have to be a professional motocrosser that I was
for sure
a little bit below it. Yep. Yeah.
Maybe you needed more testosterone. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what it was back then. Even I had plenty when I was 18. We all know.
But my boys love being out on the dirt bikes and four wheelers and all that type of stuff. Fun. So we'll see how that goes. But it's so much fun to watch them and do all the stuff. But on a personal level, I knew you were from upstate New York area, but I don't know if we've ever dug into that. But I graduated high school outside of Syracuse. So what schools did you go to? Just
so you probably know them. So Delhi and Oneonta. So basically right between Albany and Binghamton. So if you drive across I-80, right there in the middle, that's where Oneonta and Delhi were.
There you go.
Cooperstown is where everybody knows, right? The Baseball Hall of Fame.
The Baseball Hall of Fame.
Going up there in 3 weeks. So we're going to go to our
very nice
alma mater and see some old friends and all that. So very excited about that. Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
And RPI is in Albany. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Hopefully you'll be the most in shape person in your reunion for sure, right?
It's about the only thing I can claim. I won't be the richest, but definitely from my class of 1980. Like I see pictures on Facebook and I'm like, ooh, I don't even recognize people. Yeah.
It's only been a little over 20 years for me since I graduated, and I'm like, man, I don't recognize you at all. And people probably say the same thing about me with a big old beard and all that. I mean, I when I graduated high school, I was like, I don't know, 140 pounds.
Wow.
I was a scrawny little guy.
Yeah.
I didn't have 5 feet tall or 100 pounds till the summer before 10th grade is when I finally broke 100 pounds and 5 feet tall. Yeah.
Wow. When I was racing motocross, I know it's better to be light. I was 6'2", 160. Jeez. And now I'm 6'2", 225. So, for whatever that is, 65 pounds. And I'm a different human for sure.
6'2" at 160 is pretty skinny. That's
Yeah, my son's got me beat. Hit the beginning of last summer. He was 6'4", 148.
Jeez.
He is a stick. Yeah, so he finally got an internship at a place where it's all you can eat. This is this thing in companies that I didn't even know. They feed him all day. You don't have to pay for food, which is amazing. And he gained 30 pounds in a summer, so that was awesome. So
as long as it's the right weight, then that's good.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I gained the wrong weight, I assure you. But
sure.
I am interested. Like you mentioned, your dad being more of the softer one, if you will, if that's the right language, right? Which is, I think, also odd for a Middle Eastern father. That's interesting. So when did he? Is he a immigrant from Middle East, or was he born here?
He was born in Palestine. He was born in Nablus, Palestine, and so when he was, pre-war, he was born in 1933. So they went through the whole getting kicked out of their homes, and so he had that sort of mentality as well. My mother had lived through the Depression, so they both were. There was a lot of fear-based in my family. That's why they took corporate jobs. That's why they were big-time savers. They saved everything, and because they had both had everything, but lost everything, right? Mm-hmm. So he was actually so they're both first generations. I'm first generation. So he was born there, and my mom was born in Frankfurt, Germany. She came over when she was 2. He came over when he was he actually went to college, I think, when he was 16. He was absolutely brilliant. If you ever want to do something fun, Google Farouk. That's my middle name too, Farouk. M is the middle initial, as in mom, and then Odeh, my last name, and just write Farouk M. Odeh Mathematics, and you will not understand any of the titles of the papers that you pull up. My kids do it all the time. So, so he moved, I guess he was about 16, and he went to Berkeley. That's where he went to grad school for mathematics.
Wow. Yeah, so
Yeah,
he definitely
crazy.
was getting in there early. That's impressive. So
Yeah, for sure.
So did he graduate in Palestine and then come here? Graduate high school in
He
Palestine and then came
graduated high
here?
school. I think he graduated when he was 13 or 14. He had to wait
Jeez.
to come to college. Yeah, he's like that. We've got one at Tech right now. I think is 13. He's a freshman at Georgia Tech in like chemical engineering. He was
That's
like
insane.
that. Yeah, and they wouldn't let him leave. And he basically picked mathematics because it was the only one with a full scholarship. So he wanted to go into like nuclear engineering, but they wanted mathematicians back then. Makes sense. It was the 50s, there was a lot going on with the war and all that. And superconductors that was really a big thing back then. So he went into mathematics specifically because they paid for his whole college. So yeah, he had the only perfect score on the entrance exam in all of the Middle East ever. Like maybe to this day. Yeah. It was hard to live. Imagine that guy trying to teach me calculus, and I was not applying myself. Right? It was not fun.
I'm over here trying to teach my kid long division. I'm like, good.
Yeah, no, I think I lost my kids in terms of like being able to help them with school, like right before high school. Like, it's just so much more advanced. Plus, like I said, my kids went to private school, so it's just a whole nother level. So. Yeah, so it was really interesting, and we can definitely dive into that. But I remember I grew up in people say New York, they think Manhattan. No. I was in like white trash. In Georgia, you'd call it redneck. Like I just went home to my hometown. When I grew up, there were 1,000 people there, Adam, and now there's 1,500. So, exponential growth over 40 years.
Yeah,
massive growth.
50%
and really
growth rate.
Mostly blue collar, So, yeah, exactly. Mostly blue collar, carpenters, electricians, a lot of firemen on my street. A lot of really tough Irish, Italian. Everybody on my street was Catholic except us, right? So it's ironic that I'm Catholic now that I've converted as an adult. That's kind of interesting, right? But yeah, and I had the weird name. I had the weird dad. Like I was looking back on it, like I never fully fit in. And I think that's why I gravitated towards, like I found something I was decent at, the motocross. And by the way, my mom and dad were so supportive of it till that day I told them I wasn't going to college. And then it all changed.
Yep, support's gone.
Yeah, they would drive me to the races, and my dad was my pit crew, and we had some really great memories doing it.
That's awesome.
Until I would get hurt, and they'd have to put me on a stretcher, and that was always fun. Watch your kid do that. But yeah, so I was kind of the odd kid, right? I was the odd kid out, and I played baseball for 2 years, and that was it. Didn't knowing me now, like I wasn't into sports at all. I was into this fringe stuff, and it definitely defined me. It made me be very independent. Trying to like embrace my differences. And whereas now I know, I'm looking back on it with 30,000 foot view. Really, I was uncomfortable, with other people, so I would kind of lean towards, oh, I don't need your football stuff. I'm a motocross racer, right? I'm tougher than you, and all that stuff. And now I see like the benefit that my kids get from team sports and being part of a group like that. And, kind of wish they had pushed me a little harder, but it is what it is. We're exactly where we're supposed to be, right?
Yeah. Well, and if we're not, hopefully we realize it and go somewhere else, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's all part of the growth to begin with. It doesn't really matter one way or another. You look back on it and I'm only sitting in the seat today because of the things that happened to me in the past. So there's really not much,
Yeah, I've talked about that on almost every podcast, is that I don't believe in regret at all. Because it's exactly the way it was supposed to be. And telling that business story, I'm so grateful for everything I went through, because I have things that money can't buy. I have appreciation and perspective. And for sure, you don't get that until you've been at the bottom and then worked your way back. And I'm so appreciative. I mean, it's funny. I was listening to a guy online, and he's super competitive, and he was like, one of the things I do is I look at my bank account every morning, and I'm like, I do that now. I did 10 years ago. Like I didn't want to see it, but I just do it, and it just brings me joy. It's like, and to see it grow and all that. Hey,
one thing I forgot to tell you before we started is almost every time one of my sons walks in. But
I love it.
What's the matter, buddy?
You don't look happy.
You don't feel well? No. Yeah. Well, did you check your temperature? Yeah. What did it say?
This year it's 90.8.
Yeah.
This year it's 99.0.
Why don't you go lay down for a little bit then? It's probably from all that jumping you just did on the trampoline all over the place. Yeah, go lay down a little bit, get some rest. Can you say hi to Mr. Rami first?
Hello. What's your name?
Oh, let me put a headphone in.
What's your name?
Adam.
Hey, Adam. Are you the one that rode a dirt bike?
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that smile. All of a sudden, he's happy.
He is a fan. Yeah, he feels better all of a sudden. Yeah,
Yeah, he's like, wait, ride dirt bikes?
there you go. He used to ride dirt bikes a lot.
Yeah. I wish I could pull up a picture. I used to race him, go all those big jumps and break bones and all that kind of fun stuff.
He's in the process of learning how to do wheelies.
Wheelies are the best. You are
And
not
he keeps
getting
throwing my headphone on the
You
floor.
are not getting that headphone back, Adam.
Yeah, if I do get it back, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Jeez, buddy.
It's going to have earwax all over it. Ew.
Yeah. The earwax and dirt from the floor. Lovely. Yeah. There it goes again.
Oh my gosh, that's
Go
awesome.
lay down and get some rest. Give me my headphone and go get some rest.
Every time I smile.
I love you, buddy.
Wow. How old is he?
He's 8.
Oh, I love it. I
Yeah.
love it.
So,
Yep.
he's loving trying to get the wheelies in. So he loves to show it. Anytime we have somebody new over, he's like, all right, Dad, can I ride the dirt bike? Go ahead, bud. So go in the backyard and make it happen.
What size? And we're going to digress here, but we have to. What size is it?
Perfect.
The dirt bike?
So it's only a 50 right now, but it's too small for him. I need to get him.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at a CRF 110 to have him jump on and give the 50 to his little brother.
Love it.
So that's
I finally got back on after years, and I took my son and his friend to there's a 1,000-acre place. In fact, we're going to ride there in the Go Abundance event. That's one of the events.
Of course you are.
Is dirt bikes. I know.
I can't go.
Yeah, and you can't go. I cannot believe it's dirt bikes. And I took my son in 2019, and we rented. I think I got a 450, and he got 250s. Oh my God, what a difference. I hadn't been on a dirt bike since they switched to four-stroke, right? So it's such a different world.
Yeah, a 450 four-stroke is like such a smooth ride.
Oh my God.
Nuts.
You don't, Well, we call it cheating. Like compared to a two-stroke, it's cheating. Like you can make major mistakes and still clear all the jumps.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that on a two-stroke. That's why I got hurt so much, right?
Yeah.
You miss a gear, you miss the power band, and you're done. And so that was super fun. And but I watched those 50s at the halftime at the Supercross races. The kids ride those KTM 50s.
It's fun to watch.
They have more travel than my 250 had when I was racing. Anyway, we digress. You got me talking about motorcycles. I could make this whole podcast.
That's quite all right. I love riding motorcycles. That's my wife rides motorcycle. We just recently had our daughter. She's now 3 months old, right?
I know.
And thank you. We tell people all the time, like, I don't know what we're going to do if we have a girl that wants to be like a princess, because like my wife rides motorcycles and shoots guns. So
that's awesome.
If we end up with a girl that's like, I really want to have a tea party and wear my tutu, I hopefully you can wear a tutu right at a dirt bike, because I had one.
I had a girly girl who was dolls, and she would literally wear her princess outfit to school. We had to like make her take it off, and now she's almost professional dancer. Like that's her world now, and so that's what she's going to college for. Like she's totally into it. I learned a lot about dance. They are major athletes. So
yeah, for sure.
Anyway, so
I don't even remember where we were now.
I don't know, something about my dad and the difference in the dichotomy of her mom being the tough one, the dad being
So let me. When you were growing up, were they like pressuring you at all on the academic side? I mean, I know you said you like to do outside stuff in the sports, but I would imagine with parents like that, they were probably pretty strong about like school ethic and that.
Interestingly enough, looking back on it, like I know they were disappointed, right? Because they knew I was smart and I knew I could do better. And I never did homework ever, like never, right? I actually failed trigonometry. It's the only class I've ever failed in my life. A mathematics class, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm sure they were, but I'm just telling you, man, they were so freaking busy. I mean, they were probably both working 70 to 80 hours a week. They didn't have time for it. They didn't have time for it, right? Like by the time they got home and they didn't have much of a relationship, like they didn't go out or they didn't socialize together. They would have academic conversations. I remember parties being so boring, all the IBM people, because they were just talking this high level stuff. And I think you and I have talked about this, and that's where I cut my teeth on back then. People being unbelievably. I mean, my father was a Muslim from Palestine, and he had full on Jewish friends that they disagreed on everything, and they were best friends. And that's what I thought was normal. It ain't anymore.
Yeah, no joke.
I remember they would have these unbelievable. It sounded like an argument, and at the end of the night, they would come to they'd find a place they were both like agreeing on, and they would hug, and the night would be over, and they're best friends. I never saw them like that. And I'm like, that's possible. And I still tried that till about 5 years ago, and I don't try it anymore. But anyway, so they did not pressure me as much. they definitely, the minute I said I was going to college, they were all in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they were very supportive. My mom was super organized. I got to throw in here too. They were both hoarders. So if you've seen the show Hoarders, that's how I grew up. 100%. Like if I was like, if it was now and it was my kids, defects would take them away. That's how bad it was. And another weird thing, like it was hard to have friends over and all that kind of stuff. Another reason why I'm OCD clean, right? So why like I'm literally like I get upset if I haven't shaved in a day. You know what I mean? Like it's so.
My background probably drives you nuts. Then,
oh my god!
Not organized.
Look at mine. There's
like,
just a light. No, I like it. It's very organized. If it was like papers all over the place, I'd literally come to your house and clean it up.
Oh yeah,
you know?
So that's why the camera's not pointing out at the desk. It's pointing back there. Yeah. See, well,
that's what they were academics, right? And that's how they lived. Piles of papers and chalkboards and all that. And so I don't know how I got off on that, but that's an important part of growing up and kind of this, for lack of a better word, it was just weird. Like weird, not in a good way. You know, like weird that was separating me from other people. And I had some close friends, but nothing like I have now. And so for me, college was absolutely a time to reinvent myself.
Yeah.
Right. I really disconnected from my parents and just became this whole new person. Like I didn't date anybody in high school. And my wife laughs. She's like, you didn't really date anybody in college either. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm not the word for it. Yeah, fair enough. It was the 80s, you know. But you know, I exploded into my personality. You know me, I'm a gregarious guy, I'm fun, I'm extroverted. Well, I think I'm fun. I think I'm funny, you know. But that person was just, he wasn't around until I left home. You know, and it makes total sense, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not going to try to diagnose anything, but given the fact that how intelligent your parents were and the hoarding and all that type of stuff, do you think there was like some Asperger's type of thing going 100%. On there too? Yeah,
100%.
Because, I mean, that sounds like it would be like just where their brains were and how they were.
And crazy because like if you, I wish I could pull up a picture, but if you saw it and my mom would say, oh, I need that bank statement from 7 months ago. And she'd go, it's over there on the right underneath. Like she knew exactly where it was.
Jeez.
Yeah. And that brain power. I'm like, oh my God, if you cleaned all this up, you'd both be like running the freaking Oppenheimer project. Like, you know, you know, it was amazing and scary at the same time. And it's funny because when friends knew me in college, I had like the neatest dorm room of anybody. I was always cleaning my room, always keeping it clean. And then I would bring friends to see my parents' house and they're like, what? Like this is your parents' house? So, you know, it's funny to dredge this stuff up. My wife calls it child abuse. I say it made me tough, but you know, we can look at two things and
tomato, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Made me stronger.
And it's hard to even, you know, when you're going through it, who knows what you're not learning it until later and all this stuff. Like you just don't have a clue. This is what's normal. Like, and you don't know that it's not normal necessarily. Right. Like, I mean, I've been all over the world. So
you've seen probably been in the Middle East too. And you see how they
very much
world.
So,
and it's completely, you know, like we think we have it hard here with racism. I'm like, you have no idea.
Well,
go to the Middle East for a little while. Let's not go down that road.
Yeah. But it baffles my mind, the way that people think about this country. And it's one of those, like, if the things that we complain about oftentimes tell us exactly how good we have it, right? Like if we're going to complain about some things, like if this is what you have to complain about, you clearly have it very well. But, you know, we're going to just pull this, pull that, you know. I mean, there were times literally like driving around the mountains of Afghanistan, right? And you'd see people come out of a cave. That's their house. They're just living in a cave. That's where they're at. That's all they know. That's what goes on. And right down the street, right down the dirt road, the other side of that little mountain is, you know, a bunch of Taliban folks who run the whole area and all this stuff. And like, they're just, you wonder if they've ever even seen, I mean, I know they have, right? Because we've been in the country. I mean, I went to Afghanistan 07, 08. So, I mean, we'd already been there for 6 years. So, and you know, the Russia war before us. So I knew very well that they had seen, you know, vehicles, but you drive through and you're like, I wonder if they've ever really seen a vehicle. Like they just come out of a cave and this is where they live. And you're like, man, oh man.
No idea.
But they don't know any different, right? They're just like, oh no, this is life, you know? So, you know, I think that's, if we can have that perspective of going, okay, well, I want to make sure my kids know that it's different. I want to make sure that I know that it's different. I want to make sure that I'm understanding that what I have is very special, and that what I have is.
It's one of the reasons I love my church and why I got my kids really involved with like the homeless shelters in Atlanta, and it's just to keep perspective, because especially when you send your kids to private school, there's a lot of advantages, but one of the disadvantages is that comparison trap that they get into, and they think everyone lives like that. You know, they go to their friends and they come home to our 4,500 square foot home and like, oh man, we've got a dump, you know, compared to Susie's house, right? And like, let's go to downtown Atlanta for people that have no homes and
no
feed
kidding.
them the only meal they're getting today, and let's get some perspective. And that's a big percentage. And so it's funny. I obviously don't talk about this a lot, and it's interesting to go back. And I had this conversation a lot with my wife, and you know, like I said, she's like, oh my gosh, that was so hard. And I've come to this place where it's like, getting back to the no regrets, like it's literally what made me who I am. Yeah. Like it's why I'm determined. It's why I have organization. It's why, you know, all the stuff, the drivers is because of all that, you know, like I did not want to live like that. Like there's no way. I don't want to raise my kids. You know, I married my wife for a lot of reasons, but one of them is like, she keeps a really great house. Like it's a very small reason, but if she was a mess, and by the way, my sister became a hoarder, right? And my one brother who's in Washington, and then my other brothers did not. So it's like, it's really interesting what can happen. Everybody raised, and we need to know this from twin studies, you know, even same genetics raised in the same house, and they can end up different. Yeah.
And I think that oftentimes, like if we're, you know, you either run the saying, what you're running towards something or run away from something, right? Yeah. And oftentimes when we look at like our parents, we're likely going to either follow the same track that they did, or we're going to go on the complete opposite track that they did, right? Yeah. And it's because you're either running away from what you saw or you're running towards what you saw.
Like children of alcoholics, you know, like they either become an alcoholic or they never touch a drink. There's rarely anything in between the two, you know, and they see that. And I think that's kind of what I did. And I think that's why, like, I raised my children in a much more what I would consider traditional, you know, like I didn't have religion growing up, right? My dad was Muslim. My mom was nothing. They just decided not to be involved in it. He was involved in his faith probably till I was about 8 or 9, and then he gave up on it as well. So I was like, I don't want my kids, you know, I want my kids to have more structure. So that was very important to me. From the very beginning. So
I was actually going to ask that if you grew up Muslim or not. Sounds like no,
not really. I watched my dad pray, and I prayed with him a couple times. But you know, when I was in the Middle East, we did it a little bit, but I never absorbed the religion at all. And my mom was Lutheran, so you know, it was just a weird mix. And you know, she wasn't against it at all. But they didn't absorb it, you know, and like I said, all my friends were Catholic, and this is like pre-Vatican II, so I went to a couple of masses and I got scared the crap out of me, you know. So it's like, it was dark and the priest was facing away and he was speaking in Latin, and I was like, oh, this is frightening. It's so much, I love it now. Like it's been such a blessing for me to do that and raise my kids in it too. That's been awesome.
When did you become a Catholic?
Yeah, I 2008, same time that kind of interesting when things were falling apart financially, and I was also in a very challenging time in my marriage too. So I had a lot going on at that time. You know, moving the business, marriage was challenging, converted to Catholicism, it's funny. We had put our kids in private elementary school in a really nice Catholic school, and my son started asking me questions about the faith that I couldn't answer. Right? I'm like, what's this and what's that? And I said, you know what? I'm going to go to RCIA. I'm going to go to conversion, and I'm just going to audit it. This is my theory. I'm just going to go. It's what better way to learn? In 9 months, I can learn the whole faith, right? Yeah. And 3 months in, I fell in love with it. And so that's why my name was Paul. Like I was converted. You know, I saw myself as sort of like St. Paul. He was against it. I wasn't like vehemently against it, but I certainly wasn't a proponent of organized religion, and now I just absolutely love it. And you and I have had conversations about it. And,
I mean, Saul was murdering Christians, so I mean, I don't think you were there, right?
I don't think you were there. Yeah. Not that we know of. Yeah, I was murdering them with my words, maybe, but so I converted in 2008. So, and we actually got remarried, you know, by a Catholic priest because we weren't. So we actually have 2 wedding anniversaries. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, awesome. And you know, and getting these philosophical discussions with my siblings because none of them are Catholic, and so it's fun. It's fun for family.
Do they have faith at all anywhere?
They do. They do. Yeah. They're just kind of like non-denominational Christian.
Okay.
So we all believe in Jesus, and so that's when they get crazy on the details. I said, let's focus on what we agree on, which is kind of the big thing. You know, like and so that works really well. But
That's fun. We can go down that rabbit hole too, because I love having those types of conversations too. But I'm more of a non-denominational / I mean, the church I go to is technically Baptist, but yeah, I actually was signed up for my theology degree back before I got picked back up to go be a pilot in the Air Force. But the second I got picked up, I had to cancel my classes because I wasn't sure when I was going to go to training. So I canceled my classes, ended up busting my neck, and never went to pilot school anyway. So it was like a big to do, and I've still, I don't know, what is this, 15 years later, been wondering whether or not I should go back into it and go get my theology degree, because I'm still rather interested in it. But
it's fascinating, and that's actually where I started. Kind of, my wife was really smart, thinking back on her sales process, is what I call it, right? Because she's a cradle Catholic. She never pushed me. She said, and she actually, we looked at public school in Georgia, and it was awful. And she's like, well, let's go look at this private school, St. Jude, right around the corner from our house. And I was like, wow, like, it was great. The teachers were awesome. The peers were me, like I understood the people that were there. And we started going to, like, Andy Stanley online. Do you see him at all? Yeah, so he's an Atlanta guy. So we went to his church, which was great. Went to Episcopal, which is kind of like Catholic light. It's got everything, but it's not quite there. And so I tried everything until I got there. And it was a perfect time in my life for it. If I was 17, it never would have worked. But at 45, it was. And because of the challenges I was going through
all of that,
it really saved my life. And there's a lot there, like, that's a lot of the book that I just wrote too, is how did the church really show up in my life when things were so brutal, and who knows what, right? Was it the economy that caused the stress in the marriage? Was there trouble in the marriage already? But praise God, we're married. And, I was on my GoPod today, and we rank our marriages. And there was one point, I don't lie, I was a 2 out of 10, luckily, barely. And I'm a 9 now, that's a good, 10x return, right?
That's awesome.
It's amazing. And it changes everything,
And I think, honestly, sharing the faith helps out a ton to be able to do that, because you can connect on a different level as well. And it's not just, don't get me wrong, sex with your wife is great, but that's not a marriage, right? I mean, that is not a marriage. There's so much more on a deeper level that you can go, and different places and different emotions and different things that honestly, sharing a faith together makes a massive difference in that, and at least for me, and it sounds like for you. So
it's funny, thinking back on my parents, because I know that's sort of our theme. Like, when I turned I would say I was 16, I literally called a meeting with my parents. I know this is not shocking for you, knowing me, right? I called the meeting, and I told them, I said, listen, I know you guys have been staying together for me, right? Like, because look, they lived in separate bedrooms. They were not romantic. They had the only thing they had in common was IBM, And I said, you guys can get divorced. Like, I think you'll both be happier, and I'm fine. Like, I'm 16. I'm going to college. Whatever. Going to be a professional motocross racer. I don't need this, But it wasn't a marriage. It wasn't a marriage in any way, shape, or form. It was just two parents co-parenting, and they had done their job, and they really just did it. They didn't set a great example, that's for sure. Like, they set a good example as humans, right? In their obviously their work ethic. They had pretty strong morals, all that, right? Like, my mom really had strong morals, for sure. But setting an example of what a couple looks like, I never knew what that was. I had to learn that myself, and I really didn't learn that till later in life, and the church really helped me with that, because, the whole thing, that it's such a hard thing when you have kids, but the rule is God, and then your wife, and then your kids, and then your career.
This is like the third or fourth podcast in a row that exact ranking is showing up.
I know. And what do we?
Because that's what I always say, right?
When you have a 3-year-old kid and they fall out of the boat, you're like, push your wife out of the way to get that 3-year-old kid, right?
Exactly.
But that's not the way it works, and without the marriage, and really, like, we're in that place now where that's so important, because the kids are not the glue anymore.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons it's important to do it from the beginning, because if you don't do that from the beginning, once the kids are gone, and if it's been God, kids, wife, now what? You don't have nearly anything of the connection, because your connection was the kids. That was the middle part, as opposed to 100% already having the connection. So
and I see that, because now I'm 60, right? And a lot of my friends are getting divorced, right? The kids have left the house, and they don't even know each other anymore. And they're like, "Oh, I want a young girlfriend. I want that romance back that I had." And I'm like, "Dude, that's not a marriage, Yeah. And by the way, it's going to be the same exact thing within 6 months. Yeah. It's like,
Yep.
Trust me, like I've seen it happen. So, and that's why they end up with third and fourth marriages and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So praise God that we have stayed together. And, she had my wife had a really great mom, but her dad wasn't in the picture. He was an alcoholic. He left them when she was young. And so she didn't have a dad figure, right? So so we both were trying to, we call it breaking the chain in our church, right? But we were trying to change the reality of what, because a lot of people don't, we talked about that, right? A lot of people just follow it. And so that's been a great journey, but I can't tell you how much, it really truly saved my life, like having faith and a true faith, not this sort of spiritual, la la land and whatever. If that works for some people, I'm not judgmental, but it didn't work for me.
Yeah. I'm not judgmental, but I will have a conversation with you about how it's not going to be fulfilling long term. So,
no, absolutely. Yeah. And first of all, one of the best things, one of the strongest things in my church is community, and not community that you get going for a group run. Like that's community too, but there's something so much deeper when you have a shared faith and how these people, and I could tell a really quick story. When in 2012, which was probably the bottom, like that's when our house was in foreclosure. We were out, the business was just doing terrible. Marriage was, and I joined something in my church called Christ Renews His Parish. And it actually comes from a Protestant church. I forget what it was called before they transferred over. But it's a weekend that you spend with 36 men, and the women do it too, 36 women. So it's just men, just women. You're in there for 2 days straight. You never leave. No phones, right? And it's intense. There's witness talks. There's, for us, there's confession. There's mass, all that, and then you stay together for a year every Monday night after that. And talk about bonding with a group of men. Yeah. Well, about halfway through it, I was struggling so badly, I dropped out of it. I was like, I'm done. I can't go anymore. I can't tell this story anymore. It's too depressing, All 36 guys showed up at my house unannounced and prayed over me. And look, they just showed up. I'm like, what the heck? My wife knew they were coming. Yeah. And they prayed over me and they said, we're here for you. And then they just left. And that's in my book. Like, it brings me to tears that they just had a meeting and they're like, hey, Rami's struggling. He just quit. We need to go over there. They didn't come over and like yell at me or, you need to do this. They just showed that support. And guess what? I rejoined, finished it, and it was monumental. And I ended up becoming a witness for the next group. So I ended up telling my story and helping other men, which was super powerful. So, and I saw none of that in my parents. They had none of that.
Yeah,
they had intellectual friends.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and which is great. Don't get me wrong. It's great to have those friends to be able to debate back and forth with. But again, it's a different level when you're sharing those types of relationships. But
and I never knew it.
Yeah. So you got married in 2000. So for 8 years, you were not Catholic. She was. Was she going to mass every Sunday and all of that too?
Yeah. She was,
and you were just kind of like,
I went, and I would go twice a month and had no idea what was going on and didn't feel like I fit, like, here we go again. I'm in an environment where I'm kind of weird, I don't know the rituals and all that. And, but again, she never pushed me. She brought the kids. She kept them, in the faith that whole time. So she really held it. And, looking back on it, it's pretty amazing. It's hard to do that on your own. I wasn't non-supportive. I wasn't against it. And like I said, I would go sometimes. And then we started, even when we were going to like North Point Church, Andy Stanley's church, she was still going to mass as well. So, she was keeping that alive the whole time.
Yeah. So she grew up Catholic, though, you said, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, her mom was very devoted. Right? Yep. Yeah, so her mom was very involved in the church, probably one of the most spiritual. She was one of the most amazing people that I've ever met. She passed away fairly early from cancer, but she just an incredible woman. Incredible. Her faith was beyond strong. Like when she was riddled with tumors and in her bones, and can imagine how painful that is. And they had to carry her down the stairs because we had her living here with us, and the pain I can't even imagine. And she was thanking Jesus. She's like, "Thank you for this pain. I know you're teaching me something." And I was like, I don't think I'm there yet. Like at that level of faith, but it was
most people
inspiring.
aren't. Like that's a you have to have gone on a long walk to get to that point.
No doubt.
That does not just happen overnight. Similarly, like when you're going through hardships with your family, with anybody, like it's not the ridiculous saying Rome wasn't built in a day. It's super true. None of our relationships with our wife is not built in a day. Our relationship with our kids is not built in a day. But it also means that it's not ruined in a day either. So, when you were working on the transition, or what route do I want to go with this first? When you started having kids, which was right when you got married, right? A year after you got married.
Yeah.
What kind of conversations did you have about your past already, between like your wife's past and your past, that you said, this is like, did you guys come up with plans? This is how we want to raise our kids. This is the direction we want to go. Or was it just like, let's figure it out as we move along?
Well, I mean, I think one of the biggest things we were clear on is that both of our parents were sort of workaholics, right? And so I was a latchkey kid, right? And it was bad, right? Like too much alone time was not good for me as a kid, too much idle time. And so we both agreed, even before we had kids, and she always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So I said, well, I'm all in on that. And so at least till the kids are both like in kindergarten or, like full-time school, right? Yeah. And then maybe go back to work part-time or whatever. So that was a big decision on our part that we really, really are happy with. Our kids never spent one day in daycare. They spent every day with her, and I ran my own business. And even when it was bad, I remember going to lunch with somebody like in 2010. He owned a karate studio. It's 2:00 on a Thursday, and neither of us had to ask our boss if we had to meet for lunch today. Like there's still some benefit in this, and that I was able to pick up the kids up at school almost all the time and spend time with them when they got out of school, and so that was good too. They spent the whole day with her. So, but religious wise, I wasn't there yet, right, in 2000. So, and again, I was definitely searching. Like I probably went to 7 different churches. So, and I was looking all over the place. I think I actually went to a Buddhist temple at one point. Like I was all over the place, and I think she appreciated that. And again, she's way more patient than me. Like she's like, I have zero patience. It's definitely something I read in the Bible all the time, like something I have to work on. And
but never pray for, because you don't want to be tested on that.
No.
Read about it, do the self work. Don't let God try to put me through it. Don't bring God in on that one, because he will test you. We're doing it with one of our businesses now, and I'm like, boy, is he testing us. And so so major props to her, like looking back on it, like just letting me come to it on my own. And what a cool way I came to it. Like my son brought me in, like, oh really, asking questions, right? That he asked those questions that I couldn't answer. And I was like, you know what, let me look into RCIA, right? And from then on, I had a great group. We had 12 people. It's kind of interesting. We had our 12 disciples, and we all made it, which was great. And it was a great experience. It really was. Awesome. And it's 9 months to get there is pretty incredible. Yeah. So that's really cool.
Yep.
So you were running businesses the whole time you had kids, and before you had kids and all that type of stuff. So like, did you look at like, hey, I'm running businesses, you're going to be, raising the kids. What's your wife's name, by the way? So I don't
Heather.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're like, hey, Heather, you're going to be raising the kids. I'm running the business. But did you say, hey, I want to involve the kids in the business? Did you talk to the kids about business? Like how what kind of association did the kids have inside the business?
Well, yeah. I mean, let's see. When the kids were really little, they lived at the gym, so that was great. My wife wanted to work out. My wife would come in and do sessions with the trainers. Right? She worked out with the trainer every day, and back when she wasn't working. And I can remember having the kids in like those little swingy things while we would work out. Like they just kind of watch us. So our kids have been in a gym since they were born. It's funny. My son trains at one of our franchises that we part own now, and all the clients are like, my God, he has the best form I've ever seen. I'm like, well, he's been doing this since he was 1. We had little like 1 pound weights for them, and so and they, looking back on it, like I've asked my kids about this now. I'm like, were you guys really aware? Because we tried to hide a lot of it when the finances were really bad. Like literally, we had people coming to the door to say, when are you going to pay your mortgage? Right? Those people that they hire, like awful. Right? I had the doorbell would ring and I'd go running so the kids wouldn't, because they'll work the kids. They'll say, Dad hasn't paid his bills and all that kind of stuff. And I said, how much did you know? And they said, we knew. Like we knew it. Yeah, we were a little bit scared, and we knew you guys were going to always feed us and all that, but we were wondering if we were going to not be able to stay in school and all that kind of stuff. And so we tried, but what I did through that time is once they became cognizant, I tried to teach them, do you remember what it was like 7 years ago? Like we were traveling all the time and, dad was flush with money and buying moms all kinds of gifts. And now you notice like, I don't even go to Starbucks anymore, right? Like I literally, and they're like, and I said, that's what it is to be an entrepreneur. And there's nothing wrong with that if your personality fits it and that's what you like. I still, like I said, I'm thankful for it. I would prefer to have those 4 or 5 years versus a 25-year steady paycheck in a company that, I was ready to basically slip my wrists to go to every day, Like even when things were bad, I still loved my job. I was changing people's lives. I loved my employees. I loved our clients. I loved running the show, even though the show wasn't great. And I would share that with them a lot. And I'm doing it now, like when they're in college, like, and I can see like my son's personality. He's definitely, by the way, he's looked into the military, which is pretty cool. He's looked into the FBI. Everything he's looked into he's looked into being a pilot, right? They have a great pilot program.
Come talk to me. I know about all 3 of them.
I know you do. That's what I was just thinking. This is so cool. I want to set up a call with you guys. But everything is steady paycheck, pension after 20 years. Like he's gone to, I see him headed that way because he's a total, like on the Myers-Briggs, he's the opposite of me. On the Enneagram, he's the opposite of me. My daughter, I could see being more of an entrepreneur. She's much more of a risk taker. And they're both fantastic. Love them both to death, but they both were raised in the same environment, right? Yeah. And now you see, like my daughter's like,
part of its nature, part of its nurture.
Yeah. I might open a dance studio. I get it. And I keep telling her, remember, you're going to have great years and you're going to have challenging years. And you're going to have good months and you're going to have bad months. And you just have to know that. And I said, the highs are way higher and the lows are way lower. Yeah. And if you like that, I do, again, I prefer that. And I feel like we did a pretty good job because I am like, now that they're older and they're adults, I check in about all this. Like I've asked them many times. I do dates with my kids, like separate. I'll have dinner with my son. I'll take my daughter out on a date and I'll say, did you know what was going on in our marriage? You're like, we know it all, Dad. They're so cognizant. They're so smart. And I think they appreciate that you're not like sharing everything with them when they're 5 years old. I think that's super smart, Like I partied a lot when I was younger, right? Especially in college. Never told my kids about it. And the reason I didn't is because, quite frankly, it's so different now. Like the partying and the drugs that I had 40 years ago, nothing was going to happen. Like, and now they literally could go to a party and take a pill and have fentanyl in it and they're gone. That didn't exist when I was a kid. So for me, I didn't want to share it with them when they were like 12 because they would go, oh, Dad did partied, did drugs or whatever, and he's fine. He's running a successful business. He's done it. They would equate that, and it's so different. I mean, how many stories do we hear? Football player breaks his leg, gets on Percocet for painkillers, and next thing he's out of his house and he's on heroin. None of that existed when I was a kid. None of it. It just didn't happen. And so I think that bit of like sort of protecting them, but now, once they turned 18, I had that conversation with them, And I said to my son, I said, so are you surprised that your dad? And he's like, Dad, you grew up in the 70s. Come on. Like you went to Grateful Dead concerts. Like, let's go. Like, we know what's going on. But they said, we also know how like responsible you are. And I always was, by the way. Like, I think I got that from both my parents that like literally, even if I went out till 4 a.m, I'd get up at 6 and go for a run and then make my 8 o'clock class with 2 hours sleep. Like that was just my discipline that I had. So for sure.
That's great. Yeah. So do you think that do you wish at all that as you were going through it, since you talked to them now later and they were like, yeah, we totally knew what was going on, or at least had ideas. Do you wish that you exposed a little bit more to them about the situations you're going through as you were going through them? Or are you glad that you kind of kept a little bit more separation there?
I think I like the way we did it. I don't really think we should have done more.
I know you're big on the no regrets, but
it doesn't mean I don't think, I think it would have just scared them too much. I really, really do. I think that they were not able to process, even if we said everything's going to be fine, but guess what? We're not paying our mortgage this month. Like I could see that causing a lack of sleep. I know that it really affected my wife, like way more than me. Like I always felt like we were going to be fine because I've gotten out of so many things before, right? I think, being an athlete, doing that, running a business that, I went through 9/11, we had a huge dip. 2002, we had a huge dip. Like I got all that. I never knew Problem with '08 was it was so much longer than anything else.
Yeah.
Like lines of credit did not last. I used to just get a $50,000 line of credit because I knew in 6 months interest rates would be back, everything would be fine. That didn't happen to us. For us, it was almost 5 years. Like it was really protracted. But looking back on it, like I think it's good for us now because my wife knows, hey, we got through that so we can get through anything. But she still has, I hate to use the word PTSD with an ex-military guy because it's not really that, but as close to that as you could possibly see, right? That, she still is like, I remember when things were really bad. She's like, why don't you just go get a regular job? You could do so well. And I'm like, oh my God, I'd be freaking miserable. I'd be more miserable than I am now,
Yeah.
So, and a lot of that too is from watching my parents, like my dad was never happy in his job. Never. He was a depressed guy. And we talked a little beforehand, like how that ended up. So I just never wanted to go there,
Yeah. I don't blame you. I mean, I never knew I was entrepreneurial at all. Like, I joined the military right out of high school. I didn't really have a clue what I was. That's what my parents did. So that's what I did type of thing. And then I kept jumping jobs in the military, which is very rare to do. You don't see people work as many jobs as I did, but I was like, man, I'm going to do this. And I want to do that. And then, it got to a point where I realized, man, I think, like looking back on it, that was like the entrepreneur in me trying to like, I need something new. I need to build something. I need to do like, I feel like I've survived that. I know what it is. I know how to do it. I'm on to the next thing. I just always wanted to grow in different ways and try to check new things out. And like, man, it's exhausting. But the entrepreneur part of me is like, oh, this is great.
Yeah, I agree.
But my wife, I would say, is probably closer in that sense to your wife too. And I think it's one of the natural differences between men and women anyways. Like they're going to come from that nurturing aspect of wanting to be something safe and secure for their kids to make sure that things are going where we're going. Nah, totally got this. I'm going to go attack this, or I'm going to go move this. I'm going to pivot here. And, we just look at things very differently. And that's again, a wonderful blessing of having a mom and a dad in the house and having that balance. And I
didn't get that from my parents because they were both so fear-based. So if anything would go, we lived through Carter, which was a horrible economic time. Funny story, when I was cleaning the house, they saved, by the way, being hoarders, they saved every pay stub they had ever had at IBM. Every single one. So I went back and looked at the Carter administration. My dad was paying 78% total tax.
Jeez.
He's taking home 22% of his pay.
Golly, that's insane.
It's insane.
Just dreadful.
I'm sure you have tax write-offs and all that, but I was like, oh my Lord, this is awful. We complain about 40% or whatever. But and so I didn't get that kind of that confidence through hard times. I had to create that in my own self, right? And it's funny, when I was on Jamie's podcast, we talked about that, the male-female difference, and that if you're going through a hard time and the dad or the mom is having a hard time and is not confident, is showing fear, it's exacerbated, hugely exacerbated. It's one thing, it's not to be like it's not happening, right? This is, I'm closing my eyes, putting my head in the sand kind of thing. It's that, yes, this is happening. Yes, it sucks. And yes, we're going to get through it. Dad's got this. I'll do whatever it takes to keep the roof over our head. And I did, I created the whole mortgage thing became a part-time job for me, researching how to renegotiate your mortgage. And Adam, was the hardest thing I ever did in my life. I never not paid a bill my whole life, ever. I'm the guy who pays bills before I get them. When I see my American Express going up, I pay it every 10 days. I'm that kind of guy, right?
I'm very similar. Yes.
Yeah. And literally we're in this place and I'm like, why won't they renegotiate my mortgage for me? And everybody's like, they won't until you stop paying. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. Which is
it made no sense to me. Mind blowing.
Yeah.
And they were right. The minute
because they're focused on all the other people who are not paying. This person's paying, so I'm not even going to take their call.
Not even going to talk to them. By the way, with a commercial building, that doesn't happen. You don't pay, they take your building. It's a completely different story.
Yeah,
you know that.
Very true.
Yeah, because I said that with our commercial building. I go, well, can I do what I did? No. Do whatever it takes to keep paying that mortgage, Great turnaround story there, by the way. Obviously, go abundance now. So really, really nice story there. But so, it's funny. A lot of people, when you talk to psychologists, I've done a ton of therapy. I love therapy. I love going to them. Love going to marriage therapy. We have a great one in Tampa, by the way. So next time we go, really, really great guy. It's always like, where'd your personality come from? Is it your mom or your dad? And I'm like, gosh, mine is almost in spite of my parents. Does that make sense? I almost created who I know I get my organization, my list writing, like that. I watched them and I realized that was good stuff. but like personality wise and like that I try to be honest all the time. Like I got a lot of that from my mom, but it really was self-created, like you hear that with a lot of people that were latchkey kids, you had to sort of create where you were, which by the way was super common. It was either my parents both working, latchkey kid, or the traditional Italian dad working 90 hours, stay-at-home mom. There was nothing in between. Yeah,
that makes sense. I mean, I guess I grew up obviously a little bit later than you, but
a lot later. But thank you for that, Adam. I appreciate it.
No problem. Here for you. Here to make you feel better. But I was never home. I was always gone. But I was very good at school. Like I knew that I had loving parents. They were like my mom had to work oftentimes a couple jobs while my dad was working a couple jobs. So they were both working so much that I was just like, all right, I'm gone, and I'd ride my bike everywhere. I'd wear my dad's old military uniform and go running around like the woods and, play,
blowing things up with firecrackers.
I lit a lot of fires. Lit a lot of fires. The BB gun wars and the whole 9 yards. So, and I really would like my kids to have,
me too,
as close to that as I can. Like get out of the house, go explore, go do things. I don't care. Like jump the fence in the backyard, go run through these woods that we have. Like just go be a kid, I like get off the video games, do all this stuff. We don't have any video games in the house at all.
No, good for you. Good for you.
And it's there's part of me that says, maybe I should get some of those video games that help them with like work through things and like but I know that like my mentality, I mean, when I would play a video game, I'd play it a lot. So now it was like I don't want to have that around. Similar to me in carbohydrates. If I'm going to have a carbohydrate, I'm going to have all of the carbohydrates, right?
Right. Well, we talked about this. We both have black and white personalities. I'm either partying like crazy or like I literally go 10 weeks without a drop of alcohol. Like that's kind of
Oh well, the alcohol thing, I'm able to thankfully. I used to not be able to, but I'm able to now. Just be able to have a glass of scotch or two and or an old fashioned, because that's like my favorite drink in the world. Make myself a nice smoked old fashioned at home. Golly, I love it.
Just one. Just one.
Yep,
that's
just one.
Great.
Yeah, it's usually a pretty strong one, but just one. That's all I need.
That's
but when I'm with some GoBundance guys, though, once in a while I have two or three, and it's like, man, we had a golf tournament in Steamboat. I think it was Steamboat a couple years ago. And we were out we were in Aaron's room, one of the other GoBundance guys, but we were hanging out in his room, just chatting. It was like 4:00 in the morning. I finally got to bed. We have to meet up. We have to meet up at 6:00. I've had like probably too many drinks. And so I wake up in the morning and I still have too many drinks in my system. And I'm like, I got to go golf? Like, you got to be kidding me. Like, this is going to be nuts.
Hopefully you cracked a beer at 8 in the morning to get rid of the hangover.
That is not what I did. I just fought through the hangover, did what I could. We took first place though. So that was a plus.
There you go. But man, it's funny because I ended up with a really addictive personality that can be really, really good. I've done Ironmans, I've run 100 miles. Like I've accomplished a lot of things.
If put in the right direction.
It's put in the right direction, but it also has been put in the wrong direction too. And I'm just cognizant of it, right? Like I know that about myself, and I stay away from things like that. I always tell people 100% is easier than 99%. Like, and I could have one beer tonight and be done. I just don't see the sense in it. Like I literally, if I'm going to have a beer, I want to have fun, and so, one just makes me tired, but if I have two, I'm going to have fun, right?
Yeah. Then I stay awake.
Yeah, exactly. But that I don't know where I got that from. Because it's funny that my half brother has it too, right? He's done the Hawaii Ironman like 7 times. Like he's a real beast of an athlete. And I didn't see that in my parents. Maybe they were addicted to work. I guess they were just workaholics. I guess that's where they hoard that, And the hoarding is probably an addiction. Actually, it's more along the lines of OCD, is what they say. Ironically, I've read a lot about it when I was younger, and then watched hoarders. Right? Hoarding is actually considered perfectionism, which is really weird. But it makes sense if you understand it. They both said it. I don't want to clean. I don't want to start cleaning because if I do, I'll have to clean the whole house. They couldn't think of like cleaning just one section, So it was too overwhelming. So they never did it. They never touched it. I'm like, wow, I never would have thought of that as perfectionism. But it is.
And part of it is also weird. Like, I need to save everything because what if I need it, right? And that's a bit of a perfectionist thing too, right? I need to keep it. I need to keep that.
We might be able to use this. Soup cans. Clean out the soup cans. Might be able to use this later for something like, what will we use it? What will we use it for? And then I look at,
washers, screws. things like
buttons.
that. Yeah.
We had a thing of buttons.
Yeah. Needles, whatever. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh, it was amazing.
So I want to chat a little bit about the turnaround that you mentioned with the, going from nothing. How did you go from the all the way down 2012, losing everything, people knocking at the door, to, building a business up again and going through that? What do you think, brought you through that, as far as like the, grit, determination, whatever it was that was motivating you to do it, and then B, like literally the tactics behind what you did?
Yeah. It's great to have some space from it now, because I can tell you exactly what it was. Right. And I can also be really honest. Like, it's very easy to look back. It's very easy to tell people your business failed from 2008 to 2012. Right. Oh, of course it did. Right. But looking back on it, like my buddy who owns Alloy, he was doing great. Right. So I didn't do great in 2008, but he came back immediately. In fact, he grew his business during that time. And so looking back on it, for sure, the economy was, and back then, I'm not now, but back then I was a very slow pivoter, because what had worked in the past for 9/11 and the other dips was just work harder, get some working capital, get through this, and everything will be fine. Really, what should have been done at that time was a complete change in my business model, which is what my friend at Alloy did, right? So looking back on it, truly the reason that mine was not the reason that we dropped, that was the economy, for sure. Like we had 350 clients, 80 of them were in the real estate business, right? Jeez. Mortgage brokers, real estate agents. We lost all of them. Like they weren't even paying their food bills, so they're not going to pay $400 a month for a gym. But why it was so protracted is because I lost my mojo. And I lost my mojo because I was having such a challenge in my marriage at the time. Yeah. And without that support, that home strength, I had lost my why. And you and I, how many times did we talk about the why when we're talking about coaching, right? My why was always take care of my family, make sure my wife can stay at home with the kids, be the provider kind of thing. And because we were struggling there, and by the way, I didn't know this until years later in therapy and really looking back on why did it last 5 years? So around 2014, I finally was done. I tried so much. Like I look back when I sold my business at all the things I brought Zumba Zumba classes, right? I had CrossFit in my gym. I wasn't even a CrossFit gym. I had a side thing of CrossFit. I had another gym renting space from me inside my gym, right? Like I tried it. I had dance classes in the afternoon. I had everything to try to stay alive, right? Tried to sublease my space, had a chiropractor, all that. And 2014, I just said, this is it. Like I told you, all my savings is gone. The building, we had bought it for $1 million. It was now worth 600 and we owed 800 on it. So we were 200,000 underwater, right? House was underwater. Our fixed expenses were 32,000 a month in the gym and we were doing 28,000 in revenue. So you don't have to be a mathematician to realize there's nothing there. We're negative. So I called a realtor to short sell the building because we had flattened. The one thing that happened is we had stopped. So in 2008, when we bought the building, I was doing over $1 million in revenue in personal training, which is a lot for personal training. 83,000 a month and personal training is great. In 2014, I was doing 28,000. So I was down 70%, right? And remember, I had doubled my fixed expenses, right? I bought $1 million building, way more electricity, more equipment, all that. So I called a person to short sell it. I said, you know what? I'm just going to move back into a small space. Because I was in, by the way, when I was doing $1 million a year, I was in 3,500 square feet. We were crushing it with ROI, like with our returns, That's like awesome. My net income was 35% on $1 million. Like felt really good back then. This is in the early 2000s, right? So called her, started that process. In the meantime, my good friend who now had become, he's the CEO of Alloy, who now had become sort of my business mentor because he had grown so much. Like at this point, he was licensing his products to 2,300 gyms across the world. So he was crushing it, on the speaking gig, all that. And he said, I want you to give this one more try. He said, I have an intern that I think could really help you. And I said, really? Like, how am I going to pay this guy? Like, my numbers, So somehow I got a loan. I said, I trusted him. And I said, all right, I'm going to give this one last try. And I think, we're best friends. And I know I've asked him this question and I know he did this. It wasn't the guy. He saw that this guy would bring me back. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yep. Young guy, really dynamic, shit ton of energy. You know, he's still an intern, so he was me 20 years ago. He got him in. I somehow got a loan to be able to pay this guy for a year, right? Paid him commission only. And that was our turning point. So at the end of 2014, we were down 70%. By the end of 2015, we were doing 40,000 a month in revenue. We'd gone from 28 to 40, and it went up from there. And it was, and I want to give him credit. Like, he really did. You know, he's the guy that ended up buying my business. He really did. He brought in a lot of stuff. He brought in a lot of the alloy stuff that we do now, right? But really, what he did is I got fired up again.
Yeah.
I had sort of a partner, right, that I could lean on. And what happened, the real change that happened is I finally leaned on another person. And I'd done everything myself before that. Total lone wolf, never had minority partners, always did it myself. And that is what turned it around. It really is. Wow. And then in the meantime, you know, we found a great therapist down in Tampa who does like couples therapy that really helped us a ton. Like, we were on the verge a couple times, and this guy was incredible, real religious guy, and a very specific type of therapy. I've probably referred 7 GoBundance guys to him at this point that are struggling in their marriages, because I went from a 2 to a 9. So there's the information. And so that was really the turnaround, Adam, like just coming back. And then ironically, we had a discussion one day about opening another location. That's how well we were doing. And he came back the next Monday. He said, I talked to my wife and we want to buy your business. And I'm like, F yeah, let's do it. And, you know, like, I was ready. Yeah. I saw that as an opportunity. Because look, even though we had brought it back, I was burnt out. I mean, 20 years of that. And then, you know, my first podcast I did with Rick, with the CEO of Alloy, was called, you know, True Grit. Coming back from the trenches kind of thing, how that happened. And so that's what happened. And then it's just been upward trajectory ever since. So, you know, we have savings again. We sold in 2021. So I kept the building when I sold the business. So I became his landlord. And then in 2021, actually sold it for $1 million, and we owed 500 on it. So think of that turnaround. You know, went from 200,000 under to 500 up. And so that was fantastic. And my wife and I owned that 50-50. We had an LLC that owned it, so that was a really nice bump. Nice. And then just taking that to get into GoBundance and going forward. So that was the turnaround. It was leaning on others. And I think that my kids saw that too, you know?
I'm not surprised necessarily, just given the personality, but I mean, you, as somebody who people lean on to get in shape and be fitness gurus, right? You struggle to find somebody to lean on to help you in where you are struggling, right? And I think all of us we all have our blind spots, but I think that to me shows the power also of like why we're in groups like GoBundance, right? Because your friend was able to see that you needed something and you needed that boost, and brought around somebody else, and go right back to you are the 5 people you hang around with most, that I say 100%. So many times on this podcast, right? So if you had somebody that saw where you were hurting, knew how they could help you because they'd probably seen it in you and saw where you needed to be and saw what you needed that you were not able to do yourself. And I think that's one of the powers of bringing around these types of people, you know, being around the group like GoBundance. And how
ironic is it? Like, we were competitors, right? I was a competitor with Alloy. Then he became my mentor. Now I'm working there. Now I'm a franchise consultant for Alloy, and we work together, you know, and we're best friends still through the whole thing. And he said, when I sold the business, he's like, the change in you, and he's like, it's not a change. It's the person I always knew was there. Because, by the way, before 2008, I was killing him. Like, I was growing way faster than he used to call me for advice, you know? And then we flipped, and he's like, you were a 10 in a 2 opportunity. Now you're a 10 in a 10 opportunity. And that's the key when you match those things. And the gym had become an anchor. It really was. Like, it was just too much. And he did fine, you know, like, he got through COVID and that all worked out good. And then selling the building was great. Like, I didn't want to be his landlord anymore. I wanted to totally divest from the whole thing. So it was the lesson. And by the way, now I'm a complete like mentor and coaching addict, right? Like because of what that did to me, you know, I have a marriage coach. I have a financial coach. I hired a bodybuilding coach last year to change my body, to do something different, right? Like, I'm a coach, and I love the coaching environment, and I love the accountability. It's funny. One of my Go Bros challenged me today. He said, because you're so good at giving accountability to others, I feel like you don't like accountability. And I just cut him off. I said, no. I love accountability. I don't like somebody telling me how to change my methods. That's what I don't like. If somebody makes me accountable, like, tell me you are going to do this bodybuilding thing. I'm going to give you a structure, and then you do it your own way. I'm going to freaking nail it. But to tell me how to structure every hour of my day, that's not what I'm looking for from a coach. Some people are, right? For me, it's like, give me a goal, give me some pain, right? Because pain to me drives way more than pleasure. And then just let me apply my structure to that. And if you see me messing up, if I'm not achieving, for sure, we'll change something. But so going from the lone wolf to now, like, my wife's like, don't you have enough coaches? I'm like, no, I want more,
Nope,
like,
sure don't.
I heard about that, what's her name? The communication coach that all the guys are using. She was in Tahoe.
She was at Tahoe. I can't remember her name.
I can't remember her name either, but I got a buddy who's using her, and he loves her. I mean, look what she did with Pat Hyman, she brought out something that he didn't share with anybody until that moment. So,
no kidding. Yeah.
So that was really the turnaround for me.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. And I think that, says a lot anyways, just finding good partners, finding solid people you can rely on that help you out in life, wherever it's at. That's go back to why my wife is number 2 there, right? I mean, I need her as a solid partner throughout my entire life. I've got a great relationship with my wife. Regardless, though, I'd still love to get that connection with the person you have here, because who knows how we can make it better, right? With the marriage counselor.
Oh, he's amazing. I look at it as like a car checkup. You bring it in even when the car's running good. Because there might be something under the hood that you don't know about, right? And so, like, we've made a commitment that we're going to see him for the rest of our life until he retires. And then hopefully he's got somebody better. And I've conservatively sent 30 couples to him,
wow, that's awesome.
Because, by the way, we did everything before that and nothing. I mean, we were with our priest. We were with a Catholic counselor. We were with imago therapy. I mean, every type of therapy, right? And nothing moved us forward until this. It's called emotionally focused therapy, EFT. Okay. And you will absolutely love it because you're an entrepreneur. It's a year's worth of therapy in a weekend. Wow. It ain't an easy weekend. I won't lie. But that was so appealing to me because the whole process of therapy, and this is something my parents obviously never did, right? So I came to this myself, went to school for psychology, so I got it. The whole thing about therapy is like you'd have this 50-minute session, you'd get right to the cusp of what was going on, and it's minute 48, and they're like, okay, see you in 2 weeks. And I was like, what? And then this thing, you broke through all those barriers. I mean, there was a point the first time we went where we were right about to break through and it was lunchtime. And he said, guess what, guys, we're not going to lunch. You're going to keep going until we nail it. So it's great. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. It's, I mean, that 2 week break is just enough to bury it back down again and have to 100%. Dig it all back out. It's just,
if anything, make it worse because it brings up a fight.
Yeah. Because now I'm on my brain the whole time and going through the stuff. And it just, it could turn into a big mess, but real quick. So
no resolution. Right.
Oh, and my back. Owie.
Man. Too much. You're sitting too much. Go do some core.
I gotta get back on this. Oh, I've been doing that. I was at physical therapy yesterday, and because I've got like 2 bulging discs in my lower back, and he's like, "Yeah, we just need to strengthen this. We need to do that, but you also need to understand the psychology of what you're going through. Like you've been so broken for so long that your brain is going to tell you you're hurting whether you are or not because you need to be you're staying protecting. You're protecting everything you can.
It is incredible that brain connection. Just to go off on another tangent, if I rarely get sick, but if I get really sick, like the flu. I feel all my old motocross injuries. I don't feel any of them right now. But if I'm sick, I know when I'm getting sick because my elbow will start to hurt where I snapped it and a cable went into it and, chipped the bone. But I never feel it otherwise. But it's something about when maybe you're getting more vulnerable or you're getting more cognizant of your body. All of a sudden, all that pain comes back. I'm like, oh yeah, I broke my shoulder. Oh yeah, chopped my thumb off, all this stuff you remember.
That's one of the things I
hope I didn't scare your son away about that too. When I was and then I crashed and my head blew off, So.
He almost smashed straight into the fence in the backyard a couple weeks ago because he was my first
time on a motorcycle
showing off. He was showing off and he just was like, I've got room to get one more wheelie attempt in.
Yeah.
But he did not calculate the brakes at the end. So he just tried to do one more. He slams on the brakes and just jumped off his dirt bike. And I was like, buddy, what are you doing? First off, you're tearing my yard up. That's one thing you're doing.
Right.
So just letting your dirt bike flip in the backyard. But yeah,
such a boy thing, though. I love it.
Oh yeah, very much so. It's wonderful. I absolutely love it. I enjoy watching the boys be boys. And it makes me wonder what my daughter's going to do. I can't wait to see.
It's so funny because you're talking about, you want your kids to go out. I was telling a story to my kids about what it was like being a kid. Because they're always like, they're actually jealous of my childhood, and they're actually jealous of my music, which is amazing. They love all the old music, love it.
Yeah.
And they're like, you had the best music growing up. And I said, they're like, tell me what it was like. I'm like, I'll give you an example. When I was 10 years old, I went camping for a whole weekend without my parents. Way back in the woods, Bunsen burner, fire, tent that was not waterproof. It rained, right? I mean, we were probably, who knows how, let's say we were 2 miles from the house, right? But we were deep in the woods. Like, you can't hear the roads, no cell phones. And we would leave Friday night and come back Sunday. 10 years old, right? Yeah. No one would ever do that now. Like, we got in trouble in our neighborhood. We have a half-mile loop in our neighborhood. And we let our kids walk the dogs when they were little. And a neighbor came to our house and said, that's not safe. And I'm like, huh? Like, we live in Sandy Springs, Georgia. I'm best friends with the chief of police. Like, what? Like, we have cops patrolling this. Nothing's ever happened here. Such fear.
I think I think a lot of the fear, the news feeds off of fear anyways, right? Because fear sells a lot. And since we have news available to us 24/7, everywhere we're at, it makes us think that everything is bad in the world, even though it's probably the same as it was, right?
Yeah,
it's just now it's just right there in your face. Yeah, it is. Yeah. When you look at the stats and everything, right? Because I mean, even when I grew up, that's what I did. I mean, I didn't do the Friday night to Sunday thing because I had to be up for church on Sunday morning, so I could do Friday night into Saturday, but I had to be home Saturday night to get ready for church on Sunday morning. But I was doing that all the time out in the woods. Yeah. We'd make a fire. We'd be camping out. Like sometimes we had a tent. Sometimes we didn't have a tent. It was wonderful. Like it was great. I mean, I loved it. But it was a very small town in upstate New York. So it's
Yeah, I told you 1,000 people.
Yeah.
And by the way, when I went back, a few months ago, hadn't changed at all. Literally the same diner I grew up going to.
Of course,
nothing has changed.
Patty was probably still serving.
Yeah. She's 140 now.
Patty's daughter now. Yeah.
I was gonna say, are you Patty? I'm like, Patty died 20 years ago. I'm Patty's daughter.
Sounds about right.
There's something really cool about it. There's also something kind of depressing about it. Like, I like growth. I like moving forward. It's quaint that the businesses haven't changed. It's sort of depressing that like a lot of the people haven't changed. Like a friend of mine plays, he's a super successful real estate guy. I want to get him in GoBundance, but he plays in a band and they were playing in upstate New York. It's part of the reason I went. And there were people there that I went to high school with that, guess what they were doing when I was in high school? Going out drinking, seeing cover bands and smoking cigarettes. And that's exactly what they were doing. And I was like, ooh, they're like, look at you. You look really good. They're like, what have you been doing? I'm like, I haven't been sitting in a bar smoking for 40 years.
Exactly.
Yeah. But
it is crazy. I mean, when you look back at but it is what it is. People are going to be who they're going to be. And, you hope that you can affect as many people as you can and change as many lives as you can in the process, or at least I'm hoping people are trying to change people's lives for the better in the process. But yeah, I mean, it's, for me, like, I go back home and it's in New York. So I've got zero desire to be in I love upstate New York.
Love it.
I hate how the city ruins upstate New York.
Right.
But I love
Fulton County, Atlanta does the whole same thing to Georgia.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
So literally a tiny little spot of Fulton County, Atlanta, even not the whole county, just a part of the county destroys what I think is a fantastic state and some great people and, really good policies and all that. So it's interesting how that, and New York City, you're right, same thing. It's a completely different world. I remember telling people when I moved to Florida, they're like, you're from New York? Wow, do you go out at night? Aren't you scared? I'm like, dude, there's 1,000 people in my town. We didn't have locks on our doors, Yeah. I told somebody today when I was growing up, this is how freaking old, I forget how old I am because I feel good. I had 4 numbers in my phone number. Just the last 4 digits. That's how small my town was.
Wow.
That's small.
Yeah. There you go.
It was easy to remember people's numbers.
Yeah. That's funny.
I remember when they added the 3 numbers, it was like a big deal. I'm like, how am I going to remember that? It's like,
no kidding, right? And now we don't remember phone numbers at all. Like, I can remember my phone numbers from when I was a kid, but I don't have a clue what.
I don't know what my kids' numbers are. I have no idea. Nope.
No clue.
I just press a button on my phone.
Yep, there they are. I pushed mom, and now I've got her. There's no.
Well, I have a scary thing to tell you about that being a dad. You need to hear this.
Oh boy.
So this is drill this into your memory. I'm out to dinner with a GoBro. Chris Wilson, political guy.
Nope.
He's a data analyst. He just moved to Atlanta, so he and his wife and me and my wife went out to dinner, local place. My son calls me. He never calls me. Right? Always texts and says, "Is mom with you?" And I'm like, yeah, she's sitting right here with me. And he goes, Dad, you're not going to believe what just happened. She just called me. So her number popped up. It said mom. So it was the number. And a guy on the other end said, I have your mother, go in another room, or I'm going to kill her. And there's a woman screaming in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's obviously a scam, right? And he somehow grabbed my wife's number. And my son, thank God, was like, well, like put her on the phone or whatever and kind of shut it down, and then immediately hung up and then called us. But they literally do that. And they've gotten people to go to the store and get gift cards and send them $1,000 or whatever, because it's not a random person. It's her phone. I have her phone in my hand. And what's even scarier is now AI is calling and getting people's voices from their voicemail, and they would actually put her on, like her voice, having a conversation with my son. So the answer, I called my client who's a police officer. I said, what do we do? And he said, well, we have a safe word in our house. And so just have a safe word that only you guys know, right? And then when that happens, my son would say to him, well, tell her to say the safe word. And they say they just hang up when you do that. Yeah. Because that ends it. So scary, right? Like, oh my God.
That actually happened to my sister as well. So I was actually, same thing. I was deployed to, quote unquote, deployed to Thailand. I say quote unquote because I've been to places like Iraq and Afghanistan, Thailand.
I was say, were we at war with Thailand? I don't remember that one.
No, it was a large special operations exercise, and I was out there doing some stuff. So, but my sister gets a phone call from what is my other sister's phone. What comes up as, well, Sarah's calling. So, so she answers, and hey, I've got your sister. This whole thing. Do not hang up the phone. Do not do anything. You're going to listen to everything I say. And so my sister ended up doing that, like going to the store, doing the stuff, sending some money, and like freaking out. So like, she's trying to send text messages in the process, like to people, like, hey, I'm like, what's going on? And then like I get a phone call from my mom while I'm in Thailand. Like she calls me on like Facebook or whatever, and they're like asking me for help on this stuff. I'm like, I don't know what the heck I'm supposed to do from Thailand, but so I start making some phone calls. I actually called the cops, said, hey, this is where they think they're meeting. This is what we think's going on. Like, as far as we know, everybody's safe. We've got a hold of everybody, but we don't know if she's actually meeting somebody. So like, I'm talking to the cops, and they're like, and where are you at? I said, I'm in Bangkok. I know it's weird. I'm not the guy that's trying to call my sister. Right. I am just.
How long ago? How long ago was this?
This was 2018, 17.
Okay. So they've been doing it for a while. So, I didn't know
the spoofing thing's been. You don't see it very often, but they actually, one of the detectives out near my family, like they called the daughter of that detective, and that detective had already seen it happening and had warned the daughter, so she knew right away what was going on. Like hung up the phone. But my sister had no idea, right? And it was like completely freaking her out, because she's like, man, they've got my sister. Like, what am I supposed to do? So like it's a legit thing. The AI stuff has made it way worse, like you were saying. Like they could do a lot of stuff.
And it's
but I highly recommend the safe word type stuff. And like you look at at the time of this recording, like the big movie out here, The Sound of Freedom, right? And the things that go on there, the world there are terrible people in the world. That doesn't mean they're everywhere, but there are terrible people in the world. And I think we need to, especially as dads, prepare our families for terrible things happening, even though we hope they never do, right? I mean, it goes back to the, plans are worthless, but planning is priceless, right? So if we can have go through, what are we going to do? How does this work? What happens here? I was even talking to my son the other day. He's 8 years old, and somebody slammed on the brakes in front of us because they got pulled out in front of, they almost T-boned. I don't know how the guy in front of me did not actually T-bone the person. But I told him, I said, if that would have happened, Dad would have been out of the car very quickly. But we've got like one of the little SOS buttons in the car. I said, but I had hit that, and you need to be able to tell me what goes on there. So we had like, how do you do this? Cool. So he started asking questions. He's like, well, what do I say about this? And what happens if you don't push the button? I was like, okay, well, then you can push the button. I need you to stay in the car and talk. Don't get out of the car. Just stay in here. Tell them what's going on. And so I'm always trying to put, and maybe it's my past, right? That has led me to doing these types of things. But I mean, I think it's wise anyways. Like, I remember when we were kids, we talked about in school, like having a plan in case there's a fire in your house, you're on the second floor. Like, what do you throw out the window to be able to get down and all this stuff, and I don't know. I thank God I never had to use that. Right. But I'm glad that people talk to me about it. Like
Yeah.
was never glad about it then. I was like, when am I ever going to need this? This is stupid, you know?
And
But,
it didn't
you know,
instill, like, you weren't staying up at night, like not sleeping.
Yeah.
That's the thing. But that's
Yeah.
what the news does now, you know? Going
Yeah.
back to
Oh, it's
that,
terrible.
like, yeah, no, I think it's really good to have that stuff. And I do that with our kids too. And, you know, now they're adults, so you just pray you
Yeah.
did enough, right? And so
Yeah.
far, like, watching how my son handled that, we've done pretty well, right? Like, he
Yeah.
was even keel. He called right away, and, you know, he was definitely upset. Like, it was scary. Imagine screaming woman in the background.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
you know, and he never heard about it. Of course, he looks up right away. Here's the 5 apps you can use, Dad, to spoof a phone call and all that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. We looked it up online. So, but we taught it right away to the people at dinner with us.
For
They
sure.
had never heard about it. So, and now hopefully people listen to this podcast, and, you know, we can shut this down. But, yeah, you know, you're talking about the news. The crime in the United States is actually overall down 30% since the 70s.
Mhm.
The reporting of crime is up 600%. So our perception is that it's
Yeah.
6x worse than it was in the 70s.
Yeah.
There's, like, the child abduction thing absolutely happens, right? It's awful. And I think that movie needs to be seen by everybody multiple times. I paid for people to go see it. I think it's such an important movie. And that guy is a freaking hero, right? What he's doing. That's my opinion. And, but we can't live our lives like that's happening, because I also have a brother who's a police officer who knows the statistics, and he's like 97% of the time it's a relative, right? That's taking your kid. It's an uncle, or most of the time it's a estranged parents. It's a dad taking the kids, but it does happen, you know, and we have to be, you know, you have to teach your kids. And
for sure,
you know, it's like my daughter, she's going out to bars now, and like, never put your drink down. Like, statistically, it's probably never going to happen, but if it does once, your whole life is over.
Yeah.
You know, I have her carry pepper spray when she goes out. Like, I'm not a paranoid guy. Like, I go running, but I'm not worried about me. Like, you know, it was funny. We were just in Spain, and, you know, we were walking down this alleyway, and there's 2 guys walking towards us. You know, it's just me and my wife. And, you know, the alleys in Spain are like so small.
Yeah, very small.
But so are the men. It's really funny. Like, and my wife was like, I never felt scared at all, because you're 9 feet taller and bigger than these guys. And plus, they're all so nice, you know. But all the crime, and the cops said it all the time we were in Spain, they will not hurt you, they'll not kill you, but they will steal your wallet and they will steal your phone. Like, they will pickpocket you and all that. So, but yeah, I think that's such a balance as a dad, to be like, I have a friend who's really paranoid, and I see it in his kids. They are really scared. You know, they're scared to leave the house. So, you know, all that kind of stuff, right? And then I have friends that are completely laissez-faire. Like, and guess what? Their kids are kind of a wreck. You know, like, they're out doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. So there's some balance in there, right? And none of us are going to get it right. But, you know, I think going back to the very beginning of this, the breaking of the chain, that to me is like the things that we saw that were detrimental to us in our parents. And the scary thing is, some of the things that at the time we thought were bad were actually the best things our parents did, right? Like discipline, you know, and like allowing us to be free and all that. Like, now we look back and go, that's the stuff we really need, right? But, you know, but also, like, I'm not going to raise my kids in a hoarder's house. You know, I'm not going to, that's just not good. You know, I'm not going to leave my kids alone at 8 years old at home, you know, making a bologna sandwich and wondering where the food is. And bologna was my go-to food, by the way, as a kid.
I mean, why not?
It was a great, I mean, it's just
super
perfect
easy.
food. Yeah.
And then if you really want to up it, you make it a fried bologna and cheese sandwich.
Yeah, that's huge.
Sometimes you get, I mean, sometimes you really just need that.
I never cooked anything. Yeah, there was no way. So, yeah, man.
Yeah, that's funny. But there was a question I had for you, but we went off on 17 different directions, and
I don't think
remember what it was.
17, Adam. I mean, I'm sorry.
It had to have been more.
You knew I'm ADHD when you got into this.
It's and to me, that's one of the beauties about this. Anyways, it's just a conversation. So wherever we want to take it, we take it. So, but how about I switch the tables a little bit and say, do you have any questions for me? Any thoughts as we've been going through this that you want to ask me about? Yeah, I think my overreaching is what we're just talking about. You being what you've seen in your life. You've seen things that none of us should ever have to see. And you're a military guy, and you're, you know, in Afghanistan. How do you see that affecting you as a dad? Do you see it as a detrimental thing? Do you think you're like, you don't sound like you're overprotective at all. You're like, go jump the fence kind of thing. Like, where do you see that manifesting itself? You know, what you did in the military, where do you see it manifesting itself in raising your kids? Good and bad. Boy, there's a couple different routes I'll take it. So there's the wartime stuff, Iraq, Afghanistan, that type of stuff that thankfully I worked through, I mean, I've got plenty of friends who've been through a lot more than me, but thankfully I've worked through a lot of that before I had kids. I was a very angry guy for a long time. And it, like, to me, it was just, this is what the military is. This is how we do it. You know, we're just angry people, you know, and, you know, it took a while to figure out that, no, like, you don't have to be an angry person. Like, you can get through a lot of this stuff. Right. So, and it was probably, I'd say, not difficulties with my wife, but it was, you know, I thank God every day that I've got my wife, because she is by far the best person in my life that I could ever have. And she was the first person I'm not. Well, you're a close 42nd. Sorry, second. Yes, close second. That's what it's supposed to be. So thankfully on that front, I worked through a lot of that already, right? And I'm able to just talk to my kids about some different things, and be like, I don't mind talking to Adam about, you know, hey, you know, I was on this patrol with my dog in Afghanistan, and we were doing X, Y, or Z, and we found this many bombs, and we did all these things, and he's like, wow, you know, and it's like, I don't mind it. I could talk about a lot of that stuff. I mean, I don't talk about death and destruction at this point. I mean, he's 8 years old, so it's not time for that type of stuff. But I'd say that when I lost my pilot spot and I went into OSI, so became a federal agent, I worked a lot of counterintelligence cases and a lot of criminal investigations. That's what I did. A lot of stuff right there, actually, in Central Georgia. I was at Robins Air Force Base there. Oh, wow. And I did a lot of different. That was probably one of my best assignments I had, as far as like getting to do some really cool stuff. I mean, I did some cool drug stuff when I was in Tucson. I got to work some good drug cases out there, and but the counterintelligence side, I really opened up a lot when I was in Georgia. Which, you know, when we're traveling, makes my life a little bit different, because I'd be briefing everybody on all the terrible things that happen in these countries. Like, hey, you have to worry about these intelligence people, you have to worry about these criminal people, you have to worry about it. So when I'm traveling, like, I'm always like locking my computer, or I don't bring my computer anywhere. I don't like it, just the focus that I have is very different when I'm going to another country. But the criminal side of the house, it hit me more when I had my daughter, because I'd worked. I was going to ask that, a few different child sex cases and things like that. That really, the child ones were always the hardest ones to deal with, right? I mean, sitting across from somebody who's molested their child, or is doing things that no human being should ever. No child should ever have to go through. Like the most important people in our world, these children, like the people that we should be caring the most for, are the ones that are getting victimized. And I actually had one case there where my wife and I got to work a case together on this one, and it was he was, I think, in his mid to late 60s, something like that, but he was molesting his granddaughter. And it was reported into the police, and the whole family was like, you're crazy. Like that's not actually happening. They completely shamed the granddaughter to where she just completely like shut down, said she lied about everything, and it changed everything. So now grandpa has complete access to her, because there's nothing she could say. She already knows that she's like, nobody's going to believe me. I'm getting chills just talking about it. I hate this type of stuff is rough. But so now complete access to this poor girl, right? And nobody knew until one of my friends was chatting with this guy as an undercover, and we go through the whole thing, and he's trying to meet up with what he believes is a 13-year-old girl, but just happens to be a bunch of burly federal agents that are about to take him down, right? So my wife being one of those burly federal agents, which is funny. Nice. So this is the only op we ever got to do together. Maybe not the only one, but about the only one. So this guy is trying to meet up with this girl, this young girl. We go and arrest this guy, and we go and search his house and do the whole thing. And then when we start talking about what, hey, we're here for searching the house because of XYZ, we need to know about, computers and this, that, explaining everything. And they're like, you could just see it on their face, like, holy crap, I don't remember the girl's name, but little so-and-so was telling the truth. And then one of the sheriff's guys showed up, and we were talking to him, and he was like, I looked at the address before we came in, like there were a couple times we were out here for this type of thing. And it was mind-boggling to me that and that was a very eye-opening thing for me in that sense of, like, shaming somebody can easily turn them into just like a shell of themselves at that point, right? Yeah. And because she was completely shamed into now being a victim for really the rest of her life. Like, she's going to have a lot of work to go through. Mm-hmm. So I'd say those types of things were probably harder on me than the war type of stuff.
Interesting.
And I still had to work through, even now, I still work through it from time to time. Like I'll be, changing a diaper, or, just I was holding my daughter in here just earlier today, I think it was.
3 months, you said?
She's 3 months old.
Awesome.
And I looked at her and I looked at my au pair who just handed her to me, because my au pair is awesome. She comes to the room, like brings her up to I've got a glass door over here. So she, I get to see her little face roll up, and she comes in and gives her to me. And it was almost one of those, not quite breakdown moments, but I'm just looking at her going, how in the world do people hurt? Like literally babies, 3 months old.
I can't comprehend a man leaving his family, just leaving, much less hurting them. Like I think of like my wife's father just getting up and just leaving. I'm not going to help anymore. I'm not your dad anymore. I'm going to go on a boat and go drinking. Like that is, I can't even watch that in movies, much less the Sound of Freedom stuff. Like, again, it's obviously our brains are, somewhat like more normal, but I totally agree with you. I cannot imagine it. Like, and
it's I don't know. It's
I hope that for you,
it's a lot to work through, but
I think my prayer for you in this is that it makes you not appreciative, but more like appreciative of like what you have and all that, as opposed to like what could happen, because you could never sleep again, with what's in your head. And I've seen that my brother being he was police officer. He was undercover in Georgia, and then he was a police officer in South Florida outside of Miami, and the stuff he saw, and it just made him unbelievably bitter, and he's never gotten over it. And he's a total racist, and he's, he leaned into that side of it. Everyone is bad. Everyone of this color is bad. Every guy, because he saw such depravity, right? And I get it. Like I don't judge him. He saw some horrible shit, but he's not happy, and he kind of put that into his children too. And he's a great guy, and I love him to death. And he's got so much good in him. He's such a good leader. He's such a great guy. It really did. And it's a really tough thing. So, I
think it goes back to that therapy thing though, too, and having somebody to lean on and being able to talk, like even just having my wife to be able to talk to. Like if I didn't have a wife who had seen some of the same stuff, I think I would have a much harder time, because who do I have to go to? Who do I have to talk to? I've got friends of mine, we chat, but
I mean, I find that with certain subjects, I just won't talk to people about it if they haven't been through it. And like I have zero desire to talk to a college professor about how to run a business, who's never run a business, has never had a downturn in economy.
We're teaching people about an MBA, and they've never
had
done
the
it ever.
Same salary, tenured salary for 20 years, could basically show up to work drunk and wouldn't lose his job. Or like, or doctors telling me that they you don't know how to run a business. You've never had to hustle for a patient your whole life, right? They can treat your patients like crap. So I'm a big person on integrity and experience. And you know that about me as a coach. Like I would never recommend a supplement to you that I hadn't thoroughly researched and done myself for like 2 to 3 months, right? Just to make sure I don't die. I check it all first, right? My friends say I'm like,
well, I lost my coach today. He was testing
he was trying something new again. Well, my friends call me like the court. What was it? The king's tester, and they would test the poison, the food for poison. That's what I do with supplements and hormones. And I'm doing peptides now. That's my newest thing. Phenomenal, by the way. But none of my friends will do it until I do it,
Of course.
So, yeah. So, man.
I know you're going to do the research on it. You're wise on it. You know what to do. So
and I'm a slow adopter, right? Like I was slow on testosterone. I'm slow on these. And, I wait to see what's going on out there in the world, before I do it. So, man. So that's my only question for you. I'll be really curious, because I know your past, and, I know you're a great guy, and I know you're going to be a great... So you have 3 now or 2?
Yeah, 3.
3, that's right. Okay.
8, 4, and 3 months old.
Oh, so. you got them nice and spread. That spreads out the diapers. So you don't have 2 in diapers.
It was not
once.
Planned that way.
Okay.
But it is what it is. God's timing type of thing, right? So we were trying for like 2 years for our 3rd kid. Like the first 2 was like, hey, maybe we should have a... Oh, you're pregnant. Wait a minute.
Yeah,
like,
that's where we were.
Yeah. And then, but the 3rd was like, oh my goodness, like what is going on? Like this is...
it becomes a job, it's like, come on, what? I'm not ready.
I mean, it's an enjoyable job. Don't get me wrong.
That's nothing wrong with it. I got to come home again. You're ovulating, I had a client runs a great Italian restaurant. He's got 5 of them here in Atlanta. He had a 2, a 12, and a 22.
Oh wow!
Yeah. He said, "I'm spreading out the college payments." I'm like, "Yeah, well,
yeah."
It was a second marriage. Yeah, so he had the 22 at the first, but yeah, man. Well, it's the best, and my son and his girlfriend have been together since freshman year of high school. And first girlfriend, first boyfriend. Right? Never been with anybody else. and they are now seniors at Georgia Tech together. So they've been together for 7 years. And so we're like, I think we're going to have grandkids a lot earlier than we thought, So they're already planning their wedding. I mean, it's the most beautiful thing.
That's awesome.
And it's funny to watch. She's a great girl. We love her. And, he's a great kid. And to watch them, and I tell people all the time, like, grandkids, they say grandkids are the reason to have kids, right? Because like I watched your son come in, I'm like, oh, I missed that age, like I love every stage, by the way. I love being a dad, but it's once they turn 13, 14, everybody tells you it changes. I'm like, it's not going to change for me. And it's massive. And then when they start driving, that's the big, like they're complete adults and they're on their, but which by the way, that's our job. Right? Yeah. You've succeeded. Yeah. If your kid doesn't want to hang out with you, you've succeeded in a good way. Yeah. Like they don't hate us, right?
If they're avoiding you,
that's a problem.
If they're independent enough to go out and want to do things
and have friends and have their own life. And my son and his girlfriend are going away for a week, and I'm like, where are you going? And like, how'd you get the hotel? Like, how did all that happen without us? They're like, Dad, we can do all this, And I'm like, oh my God, it actually worked. How does your laundry get done at college? So, but yeah,
it doesn't.
It doesn't. No, he
turn them inside out.
Yeah, that's guaranteed. My son does that. Yeah, man,
that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
So I do have a very good buddy of mine who's still in Georgia, that Georgia Tech graduate, been in the FBI for like 25 years. So
really,
maybe another, that
would be a great contact. So, he's very into psychology. So, and he's got the personality. I could see him being like a forensic psychologist for the FBI. And he's talked to them, and then of course he researched the pilot thing where you can go into the Air Force for 8 years, and then that is credited towards your 20 years at Delta. And you literally can retire after 12 years of being a pilot at Delta. That's unbelievable. With a full pension, You
just got to buy out those 8 years. Yeah.
Right. And so it's kind of interesting how they do it. But I would see him more towards the FBI type thing. So yeah, love contact. He's really personable. He'll definitely reach out. So super cool, man. Love it.
All right. Well, I think that's a solid place to end it. I appreciate you coming on, Rami. That was fantastic getting to chat with you for a little while and going a little deeper in some different subjects. So it's I love going into I have a passion about being a dad. Like, it is super exciting for me to be a dad. I've wanted to be a dad for so long, and I want to be a better dad in every way that I can. So if I can learn from other people's mistakes and strengths, then I think that's the wisest way for us to do it, because I can get a lot of more wisdom by learning from other people's mistakes than trying to go through and do it myself.
Man, I couldn't agree more. And what's super cool is like you and I got to know each other fairly well in the coaching situation, but I think we learned more in this last 2 hours than in all of our coaching sessions,
for sure.
Beating you up about losing body fat and gaining muscle, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's been my pleasure, man. It's been super fun.
It was awesome. All right. Well, if people want to reach out to you, maybe be coached by you, or grab one of your gyms, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, it's easy. It's Coach Rami, Rami, CoachRami.com. And there's a link on there for the Alloy franchise. Set up a call if that's what you're interested in. If you're interested in coaching, quite frankly, I'll definitely do a free coaching call with anybody. Sometimes I can help them a ton, and it's it's an evaluation to see if they like me and if I like them, right? So to see if it's a fit, if I can help them, and if not, I'll refer them out. But right now, I'm really diving into. I feel like my goal is to help 1 million people before I die. And
phenomenal.
That's my overall help. And I really feel like by opening these gyms that are going to help thousands each gym, that's my way to hit that number, more than just the individual coaching.
That's awesome.
And then more bulls versus bears on testosterone at the GoBundance. I can't believe you're not going to be in Georgia. I'm so bummed. We would have rode dirt bikes together.
I know. Yeah. I would have loved to have done that. Man, oh man.
Right?
My dirt bike's sitting right out there in the garage ready to roll. So,
you could have brought it.
Man.
Oh, well. We'll be what
very
about
sad.
Vermont? Are you going to be in Vermont?
Yep, I'll be in Vermont.
Okay.
I'll be bringing the family too. So
good. Yep. Oh, good. I'll bring my wife.
I'm doing Fan Abundance beforehand. I'll be bringing the wife and kids. And
fantastic. Well, I'll see you then.
Man. Yeah, looking forward to it. But thank you so much. Appreciate you jumping on again. And everybody, if you are wondering whether or not Rami can help you out, look him up on Facebook. Look at his Facebook profile picture and go, "Oh, that 60-year-old guy looks 60. Like that. Okay, maybe he can do something for me."
It's all Photoshop.
So, exactly. Yeah. That's what I do is Photoshop for sure. So,
awesome.
All right. Thank you so much again, and we'll talk to you soon.